Good afternoon, folks. Thank you for coming to our work session this afternoon. We've got this meeting that begins at 4 o'clock, and then we'll have our regular board meeting that begins at 6. I'll turn it over to Dr. Phillips.
All right, thank you. Well, I'm about to turn it over to Jane Marie and to Roger and Andy as they do the second part of our middle school alignment, and then I will conclude their conversation with what my plans are.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Beth. At the January work session, we presented findings from our middle school alignment work that began in April of 2013. I won't go through all those steps again, but I will, just as a reminder of where we've been over the last couple of years, we've been working toward similar experiences across our two middle schools for our middle school students in Vestavia Hills. In that work, we've had lots of teacher collaboration, leadership collaboration, professional learning, revisiting materials and making sure that everything from experiences as well as resources and materials were aligned as much as possible. At our last work session, we presented our findings from a focus group that met in the fall, and from that focus group, a recommendation was made for us to consider a schedule change that would continue to allow for alignment. At that time, we presented to the board, we presented an actual schedule with timestamps on it that also included some descriptions of some of the opportunities that we would be able to have with a new schedule. That was very much an overview, and at the end of the conclusion of that, we were asked to revisit a few things, which we have done since our January work session. One was to revisit the number of personnel. Were there options for us to have a schedule that would allow a less number of new personnel, and as well as to take a deeper dive into things like the professional learning that we would embed with the new schedule, the academic strategies classes that would be part of that experience for our middle school students, intervention for our middle school students, and the opportunities for the Pirate Lancer period. So our group, which includes Brooke Brown and Jennifer Bailey, Directors of Curriculum Instruction Specialists, as well as Roger and Andy, Assistant Principals of the two middle schools, and I, working alongside the principals, Meredith and Casey, have revisited those things. And so our findings are going to be presented tonight. The thing I want to remind everyone that goes without saying, but we felt it important to put it up again. These are our strategies and our strategic plan, and these are of the strategies that we have listed as our strategic plan. These are the specific strategies that are met with our recommendation. And I won't read those to you, but they were just sort of embedded in our last presentation, but not articulated intentionally, and we felt it very important to put those out intentionally in front of our findings. What you have on the next slide is a revisiting of the personnel that would be needed in order to have course and schedule alignment, embedded professional learning for teachers, college and career ready skills for students, opportunities for students to take Career Prep A, which is a required course as 8th graders, as an elective, and then strategic intervention. We were able to revisit the PZIT's current schedule and faculty, and we were able to lower the number of requests from PZIT's compared to what we had last time by, I believe, 2. Is that correct, Kate? Roger and Andy and Meredith, that's correct, that we were able to find a way to refigure and exclude 2 people in our request. So the Liberty Park still stands the same number. There are actually 2 less in this particular way that we have designed that. I'm sorry.
One thing, Jane Marie, and I noticed that the Career Prep A teacher, at least as I know we talked about Career Prep last month, but this was I think we designated 8 academic strategies teachers at the last month's session, and now we're kind of being specific that one of these would be a Career Prep teacher.
And we do have some opportunities to think about because of the certification that you can have to teach Career Prep.
Gotcha.
So knowing that, it allowed us to rethink that and be a little more creative. So this is what the request would be for the schedule as we presented it at the work session in January, with the revisiting of the number of personnel at PZIT's. The next thing that we did was we said, okay, if we were just going to align the schedules and align the courses, what would the personnel need be? Because we cannot do alignment work without some personnel need. So we wanted to put in front of you this kind of alignment work, rather. We've done a lot of alignment work, but to this stage of alignment, we would need, the Liberty Park numbers would need to be there to create the schedule as well as the course alignment, and then there would be no personnel need at Possess. So we wanted to present that to you as well as we revisited our original. We did not articulate this into 2 slides. So we wanted to present it in 2 slides, 2 separate scenarios. This one being the one where all of those options are met, those things that our teachers said that they valued, the college and career ready skills, the strategic intervention, the professional learning, all of that, that's what that's going to take. If all we do is just create a schedule and course alignment, and by schedule what I mean by that is the number of academic minutes to be reflective in both places. So when I say schedule, that's truly that's what I mean, but I'm just using the word schedule here for common understanding. That would be the personnel need. So we wanted to break that out as well. I'm about to hand this over to Roger, but what you're going to hear from Roger, Andy, Brooke, and from Jennifer are those deeper dives that we've taken into those aspects of this schedule that we've asked for. The professional learning being vetted, we had some questions such as, well, what is a PLC? We just used some language like that in our presentation where we needed to maybe do a little bit more explanation. How would a teacher's time be spent and accounted for, and what kind of expectation would there be for teachers if we gave them this professional learning time? So Roger is going to speak to that more specifically, and then Andy's going to speak to the Pirate Lancer period because we had several questions about that, and then Brooke is going to talk about intervention, and Jennifer is going to kind of conclude our deep dive presentation on the academic strategies and what that would truly look like, because we did more of just a blanket survey of what we thought we would be talking about, and we've recognized based on a lot of questions that we've received that we need a little bit more information for you guys to understand kind of, especially some of the lingo we were using. When we say intervention, what does that mean? When we say PLC, what does that mean? And so this is just a another little layer under that of explanation. So I'm going to pass that off to Roger. Okay.
One of the things historically, when we talk about teacher planning time, people, when they visualize it in their heads that it's working on lesson plans and getting things ready for the next day or for the rest of the week, and that's one small portion of planning. But over the last several years, one of the driving forces is professional learning communities. And we have found, as research shows, that the best kind of professional development is to embed that professional development in a teacher's day, rather than asking them to stay after school or before. If we value that learning, then we want to embed that into the time. So one of those methods is the professional learning community. And at Liberty Park, we've been able to do that just due to the way our schedule has run on a daily basis. And so we kind of took a snapshot to show you all and kind of dig a little deeper to give you a visual idea of what it is that we do in professional learning communities. Now, just as a refresher, professional learning communities is a group of educators. It can be by team, an entire grade level, or by department. This one that we have run is always by grade level. And so when the 6th grade teachers or the 7th grade, let's say on Mondays it was always a technology-based professional learning community where they're always looking at what is the best practices in technology instruction. It is not just about what's the best, newest gadget. Although that is important to investigate and research, it is more about how does that translate into learning for our students. And so that's what they are working on Mondays, sometimes under the guidance of an ITS, and sometimes just together as their own team. On Tuesdays then, it's always grade level specific. That's when that grade level gets together and they start vetting out what it is they're planning for. They're comparing with each other. Then they're doing interdisciplinary units, trying to figure out what we can do to cross our standards to have more deep, enriching engagement and lessons for the students. It's where they're planning either for the week, planning for the months ahead. And then Wednesday, it's always working with guidance counselors. It's working with PST, problem-solving team. It's, excuse me, working on, as the slide says, the social, academic, and emotional needs of the students. We focus it on just that day. Thursdays is our administrative meetings when they meet with Mrs. Pierce and myself, and we talk about what it is that we're strategizing, planning for the school, as looking at policy practices, keeping them abreast of what's going on in policy changes, things like that. Then Fridays is what we call the true PLC day. And as we know, PLC is all about looking at what is there are 4 critical questions we ask educators to always discuss. And it's all about student data. What do we want our students to know? Is that on there?
It's the next slide.
Okay.
Yeah,
there it is right there.
So,
Okay. What do we want our students to learn? And that is always tied to the essential standards here in the state of Alabama. And then how will we know if they've learned it? What are the common developed assessments that we're going to use to compare? And I mean the common is because in my social studies class, I want to see what the other social studies teacher is doing. Are our assessments, are their results coming out alike, similar? If there's big gaps, I need to talk to the other teacher that might be having better results. What are you doing that maybe I can do and we can learn a little better? It's for better learning. What will we do if they don't learn? That's where the systematic interventions come in, and working on developing plans to come behind those students who are having some weaknesses or some gaps, and come behind them and help them to close in those gaps. And then what will we do if they already know it? Those kids who can demonstrate learning and they've already met the standards, what are we going to give them to enrich and to engage what they're able to do? These questions are absolutely fundamental to the PLC process, and it requires a good amount of time to constantly come back to these 4 questions. We'll look at these questions when it applies to unit tests. We're looking at these assessments when it applies to grade level assessments. We're looking at state assessments. So there's many layers of these questions we have to continually come back to and can keep turning the page to see what it is that we are doing with this data. And then once the teachers have new data, new answers to these questions, it turns over their instruction again. It redesigns what their next instruction needs to be, and therefore requiring more time in the next PLC time to develop that instructional time. So it is a very, very valuable tool. It drives the teacher instruction more than anything else does. And so that's why these are very, very vital to our teachers and making them a part of the school day. Any questions about that, about a PLC before we go on?
Thank you, that's helpful.
So before we get started on the Lancer and Pirate period questions, I'll answer 2 questions that I've already seen a couple of you as you walked in. One, I also thought Batman would be taller. And 2, we had Pirate Pride Week, so that we are dressed up as superheroes, be a superhero, and steer clear of drugs and alcohol. So I thought I'd keep this on trend.
I think it's pretty impressive that he can dress up a Batman t-shirt quite like that.
If that's your
pretty good
definition
right
of dressing up.
It just is.
It's hard to dress up a Batman t-shirt.
He did well.
But one of the things that we talked
I think
about,
the cape should have been on myself.
it's in the car. I'll get it in a second.
It's a long story.
Well, as we talk about the next part of this, we've talked about opportunities for kids, and the teachers really talked a lot when we had our first meeting about getting together and offering more opportunities for kids. And a lot of teachers said we'd like to have a second elective. As we sat down with staff and we sat down with time, a second true elective where you allow kids to pick, and it's a 52-minute period, just didn't fit the confines of our school day. So what we really started doing is how can we offer some things in that what we have now as 8th period, where we would rebrand the Lancer and Pirate period, some things that we could offer to kids, some things that we could offer that let them choose. We're not just saying, okay, we're going to put you in creative writing and we're going to put you in digital photography. These are things that are going to be on the back of the course card that kids will sign up for just like they would a regular elective. But here are some possible options. They're very similar to what we did before, but they're not just, we're going to kind of muddle through what that looks like. There's a very set, and there's not really a course of study for a lot of these. but there are plans of study that we will develop, and some of those have been developed already. And I want to talk to you a little bit about it today. Just a sample of what happens. I'm sorry, I'm standing in the way now. A sample of what happens in our pirate and our pirate period afternoon of creative writing. These are just some of the topics that they deal with. Elements of fiction, plot, character, setting, theme. All of those things are built into that currently 27-minute class that takes place each day. Finally, students write in National Novel Writing Month. In that class, they all write a novel. That is something that they do the entire month of November, and they lead up to that. Average of the novel is 20,000 words. So that's not something that can take place without planning and without a real understanding of where you are and where you want to end up. So those are the kinds of classes that we're looking at. Also, and another we'll talk about is coding. This is something that kind of grew organically at Vizitz in the last 3 years. We had a teacher that said, I'd really like to do something like this. So we had time and we had Chromebooks. So we said, let's try it. So we sat down and it really, it's dynamic and the kids learn from each other. But the idea is there are multiple components. They're learning about what they need to do with coding. They're learning about code. And some kids learn just enough to make a ball bounce on the screen. You have other kids I walked through about a month ago, and he had created, for a project he was doing in social studies, had created a video quiz game. And it was with moving, ancient Egypt. So all of it was moving pharaohs, and it was amazing. It was really, really cool. So, but those are the kinds of, so you have varying levels within the class. You have kids that are going to take this farther than we could ever imagine, and then you have kids that are just interested and are going to get in there and plug away and really spend some time getting their hands dirty and learning some of these skills that may be what they want to do when they get out of school, and this may be one of the only times during the day that they feel like they're really engaged in what they're doing. Creating projects, again, games, digital storytelling, music. They all have music embedded in the things that they create. And then they're creating really, really, like I said, it's just cool stuff. I mean, it's the 12-year-old in me, which comes out more often than it should, loves going in there. It's a fun place to go watch kids because they get really, really excited when an adult comes in the classroom and says, hey, what are you doing? And I mean, you just see them kind of, okay, and then 20 minutes later they finish describing it. So they get really excited and really jazzed up about what they're doing because they may not have that time during the day. I would invite anybody that wants to see this to come check us out during the course of the day because it's fun. They do great work. There's an advanced art. This is just another sample of types of things that they create. They're working within the community, participate in community art projects. They're very heavily involved with the University of Montevallo Student Art Workshop. They work with our drama department, create and design the sets for the plays and the musicals that we do. So they're integrated into every aspect of what we do and not just 27 minutes at the end of the day. So it's a really important part of who we are and what we do. And I think as we start to develop more of these types of classes, for lack of a better description, we're going to see them really start being woven into more of the school culture itself. Any questions about any of our pirate and answer period?
Thank you.
Love it.
You can see on this slide just, possible intervention. So one thing that we heard consistently when we met with teachers in various groups was that they wanted to have a time for systematic intervention as part of the schedule. And you saw that in our presentation at last board meeting. And so these are just, notice the word possible, because these are some things that we've explored in the past, have been looking at for the future, and some options that we could use with students during that time. Some of these address dyslexia-specific characteristics. Some of them are more reading or math-based. They also have some assessment components within these, and are research-based as well, proven interventions. With that, it would be a blend of not just a program, but actually, teachers, staff, working with students during this time. So just some options that we've been looking at for intervention time.
Something else Brooke said that we continue to hear over and over from teachers, both at the high school and middle school levels, was the need for students to have a little bit more background in some soft skills, for lack of better words. Things like, what does it look like for them to be successful academically and personally? How can we plug things like that into their school day? What can we do about communications in all forms, whether it's writing, reading, speaking and listening? And so we took a long, hard look, and this is just a little bit of an overview. What I've given you is a sample draft of the 6th or 7th grade academic strategies syllabus. But what we've done is looked at what our students needed based on the focus groups that we spent time with at the middle and high school levels, and looked at how we can really bring that to our students in the classroom. And what we did is we looked comprehensively at standards from K through 12, really, and looked at standards that we could use and align that course with. So really, this is unique in that we can create this course and provide very strategically, very targeted instruction for our students and their needs. And so as you flip through, you'll see that we've aligned it to language arts standards, speaking and listening, writing and reading. And you may also notice that effective communications and reading strategies is a thread in each 9-week term. And that's because that's something that will be embedded throughout the course. And so that will be something that builds on itself and really partners with the work that's being done in language arts classes and social studies classes and science course. We also looked at career preparedness standards because we're looking at preparing our students for college and career. And so we were able to align some of the content to those standards, as well as career education and the counseling and guidance standards. So when we're talking about preparing them to be organized, to manage their time wisely, to do all the things that they need to do to be academically and personally successful, those blend into the character education and counseling and guidance standards. Of course, we looked at technology education standards as we're preparing them in keyboarding. A lot of our students get to high school and it takes them forever to type an essay because they haven't had keyboarding. And that's a skill that they must have. They need that, and we see that need, and we can answer it through these courses. And we also have the life skills training, the LST, that they're already doing at middle schools. So that really works well and meshes with the other standards that we're looking at. Because we've introduced digital portfolios at different levels, this would be a great opportunity for students as they're presenting and working through the speaking and listening standards. This would be a great opportunity for them to begin work on that in 6th grade and to continue to build that within the classroom with the teacher on hand and present that to their peers. We've talked about student-led conferences and how effective that could be for students and what impact that can make. And that would be another opportunity for that. And then as they get older into 7th and 8th grade, test-taking strategies would be something that we would want to implement. So that's very brief. This is very not, but you have it. And if you have any questions, then absolutely let me know.
Questions?
And as we have held up through all this work, we're all in this together, and that's been an exciting outcome of us originally meeting as an alignment group and then bringing this together and presenting our most recent findings to you. Questions?
Andy, on the pilot period offerings, would those be on the 9-week term as well?
No, and those would, there would more than likely be a whole year because it is such a short amount of time. That really, if you start doing it on 9 weeks rotation, you really kind of cut the amount of opportunities that a kid have just to really master what it is that they're doing. Now, just because you were to take digital photography as a 6th grader doesn't mean that that's what you have to take every year. You've got other options. So ideally, that would be something that would take the whole year because again, you're talking about a time approach. It's about half of the regular classroom.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bow on this conversation, I hope, and explain what our steps are in moving forward and then answer any other questions that you have. What I'd want to preface my conclusion on this with is that the work of this leadership team, all how many of these folks, Jane Marie, Roger, Andy, Casey, Meredith, Jennifer, and Brooke, and the work that they have done. They took an opportunity, and when I talk about pushing the envelope, when Jane Marie says we were asked to go back, she means I asked them to go back and look at it one more time and talk about it yet again. And as we received input from every aspect, from the athletic to the academic to the math, you name it, that we received input from, the number of teachers who reached out to us and emails and asking for meetings and sitting at the table and having the voice of what they developed as these key components, they have managed in this conversation to pull all of that together. And so what this would look like and I'm so proud of the work they've done, because they really have done this based on the whole child. When we talk about the life skills training, we're talking about making healthy choices and the drug and alcohol prevention and those kinds of things that really needed to be elevated to a different level in our conversation, to the intervention for reading and for math, the dyslexia guidance that we've been given by this. This encompasses so many things beyond just their gifts and talents and the abilities that they have to do This changes our middle schools from what I have said many times as being just the bridge from elementary to high, as many people have looked at. If we could just survive the middle school years, which is working with middle schoolers, that's sometimes what it feels like. But it allows the middle schools and the conversation and their approach to this work in designing what you are about to see and we're about to talk about just in the next couple of minutes makes the middle school piece critical. And my main primary experiences have been at the middle school, and this is unprecedented work. This is work that is a game changer from our elementary schools to our high schools, that the opportunities that they have taken to talk about this work has been incredible, and I don't want to be remiss in saying that enough, and just the leadership that they've had. So here's what we would do. During the 17-18 school year, as we said, we would align the courses offered at both middle schools, as we have already discussed through the middle school alignment public forums that we have had. Liberty Park will move to an 8-period day. We would add the intervention unit there. We would add 7th and 8th grade social studies and science. We would add a 7th grade gifted unit, and we would add a PE unit. And these are because when you change the schedule from a 5-period block to an 8-period day, in order to align those and make sure that the experiences are like they should. Again, this conversation never started as a scheduling meeting. That's not what this was about. But you can't talk about the things that the teachers and the administrators found were important without looking at the time of day that is spent and the number of experiences that they have. So that's where we would begin, with the focus being on professional learning communities and what those should really look like. That is something that we know as a school district we need to look at systemically. The expectations for teaching and learning in the elective offerings, such as the Lancer and Pirate period, and the offerings that are there, the teaching of the college and career skills. I think Jennifer called them, as many people do, the soft skills. They're really the essential skills. They're really the skills that make students well-rounded and give them the foundation that they need. A lot of people do call themselves soft skills, but they really aren't. They're pretty stinking critical. And then the teaching of the career prep A, and being able to move that away from the high school and being able to offer that in the 8th grade benefits both. And then certainly our intervention processes. And right now, and that would continue for next year, our students are being pulled out of different places and parts to provide that intervention. The second year will take that into a different level. But those would be our focuses. It would be pulling these teams of teachers together to make sure that those experiences are aligned. An example would be for our math teams. You know, our sponsors and are the teachers that teach on both campuses, are they aligning those experiences so our kids are prepared at the same level, and such as that. So, and then the following year, 2018-19, Whit, if you'll change the slide, please, we would remove homeroom from the daily schedule at both middle schools, and that is where, again,
Homewood would remain 17-18.
It would for 17-18, in order to just get the experiences, the courses aligned, those kinds of experiences the way that we want them to. And then in 18-19, we would remove homeroom from the daily schedule of both middle schools, and that is where we would inject the academic strategies, because one of the things that we know is that those are processes, as they've already said, our problem-solving teams identifying our at-risk students, being more targeted, more intentional, and more directed about what we do and how we intervene on behalf of students at any place in the spectrum, but providing those academic strategies, opportunities for them to work on what we call those essential skills. We would have to add 2 academic strategies teachers at both schools for 6 and 7, 1 at 8, and again, that's because of the Career Prep A. We would already identify one of those. Why would we split it up into 2 years? Well, because there's a lot, not only is it a financial investment in what we're doing at the middle school level, but the other piece is making sure that as we move in that direction and we have different expectations and we elevate the piece, particularly the intervention and the professional learning piece, that we provide enough time for our teachers to be prepared for that. We talk about what those should look like at both places, and we really align what those expectations are, and then certainly the financial piece and providing the staff that we need to make these things happen. I don't know what more to say about it other than I just cannot believe the work that this team and these teachers have put into this, the way they have approached every time that, you know, another element of this needed to be discussed. There has not been one piece of feedback or input or question that hasn't been put back out in front of them, and they've been able to answer to it and come to some consensus. I met with all the middle school teachers on Friday at the end of our professional development, and I, you know, expressed to them, this has been exhausting, it's been exhaustive, it's been a mess. We've gotten a lot of input. There have been a lot of professional arguments, as I would call them, but it is going to make an incredible experience for our middle school students as we prepare them for the high school. That's my bow. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
So if we have any questions, we can ask Sheila, you, and others who presented,
Yes.
and then we'll open it up for anyone in the audience who might have questions. But first, let me just say and echo what Sheila, thank you, all of you, Casey, Meredith, Roger, Andy. I mean, it is amazing. The work that you all have done, and the other teachers and counselors at the middle schools. Jan last month did a digital portfolio presentation, and there were some students here then, and one of the students had on her portfolio a line that just said, "There's always room for improvement." That's what this looks like to me, is and beyond just even that principle of improvement, this to me seems cutting edge. I mean, creative, that I'm assuming if we looked across middle schools around our sister systems, they haven't thought like this. They haven't thought this deeply, the deep dive like you guys were talking about. Am I right about that?
You were right about that.
So, and then Andy, you used the word opportunity. And we talked about it with the high school, with the change in the schedule for this year, the 58 or so new classes. This dovetails exactly with that, the opportunities that you all have thought through in providing for middle school kids. So thank you for all your work.
Can Mark take the technology literacy class? Please? We nominate?
It'll be 2018-19.
But yeah, it may be too late by then.
Here's your chance.
So Sheila, just on the personnel hires, it looks like that we would hire 7 new folks for 17-18, and then for 18-19 an additional
8 or 9. How many?
6. Another 6.
Another 6. Okay. Okay.
And the way it splits out, the 7 for beginning in the fall would run about $507,500. Been looking at the budget, identified about $422,000 just right off the bat that can be kind of diverted and applied to that, leaving about $85,000 that we have to cover, and then just have to see where we are the following year with what the budget looks like and what our revenue stream looks like after it's come in for this other year. So my point is, it doesn't look like it's going to be a financial strain to be able to start it in the fall. Good. The 7 new hires.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments by any of you all?
I think this is great. I mean, you know, after y'all presented this last time, I went home and talked to Allison, and you know, when you really think about like your coworkers that excel at what they do, a lot of it is this kind of stuff right here. And you know, those are the things that, in the pursuit of all these other kind of, you know, using the hard and soft vernacular, kind of the hard topics, we've lost some of the soft stuff. So I think bringing it back in, because you know, when my son was interviewing for a college scholarship, you know, this is the public speaking and all that kind of stuff, and thinking about him going off to college next year, the organizational skills, and the fact that he hunts and pecks instead of touch types, makes me personally crazy. But you know, all these things I think are so crucial to future success in so many different areas. So I think it's awesome that we're carving out time to allow space for that to occur.
Well, and even if this is not something that we're going to have next year, the curriculum, and Jennifer Bailey really took the lead on pulling this curriculum together with the help of others. But ultimately, she went and found throughout the courses of study and beyond, even the Alabama course of study, and pulled standards over that. I mean, this is very comprehensive, even though this is only just the surface of what we would like the course to be. We just wanted, you know, for y'all to have a little better idea. I don't think we explained it as deeply as we wanted to the first time, but I mean, there's so much here about the life skills training, as well as just the interpersonal training, and then the technical pieces of, like you said, keyboarding and some other things, that this is going to be so incredible when it actually happens. And the delay of having this happen next year just gives us more time to be sure that we have developed it completely, that we have identified the right people to teach these classes, and that they've had the training that they need. So even though, you know, it might be unfortunate that we can't do it next year, we know that it's on the horizon, and it just gives us more time to get it right. So that's exciting to us, knowing what we can offer kids through these two academic strategies classes.
Any other questions?
Okay.
All right.
Were you going to say something?
Just going to open it up to questions or comments
Yep,
from
go
folks in the audience. Anyone have any questions or comments? Okay.
Okay.
Dr. Phillips?
Before we move on to the facilities update, and I introduce the team that's going to be presenting that, I neglected, Mayor Curry is here in our audience for the first time, we had talked on several occasions, and I said, you know, I would love it if you could come and just see what we do and how we go about our business. So he's here for a little bit this afternoon. I appreciate you being here. Thank you. We've already had the opportunity to talk and to work together on several issues, and I am already very grateful for the support that he is providing for the school district, and thank you for being here. Appreciate that.
And Kimberly, you as well for coming. Thank you.
All right, we are going to move on to the facilities update and the demographic report. Greg Ellis and Brennan are here from HPM, and then I want to introduce Ann Hofsis, correct, from Cooperative Strategies, who is here to represent the team who have done our demographic study and have helped put today's presentation together.
Okay. Like Dr. Phillips said, I'm Brennan Bell with Core Program Management. Greg Ellis is here. Ann Hofsis with Cooperative Strategies also here, and Rick Lathan and Sean Galma with Lathan Associates. The first piece we're going to go through today is I'm going to have Ann run through the enrollment projections report to kind of give you an idea of what the growth looks like over the next 5 to 10 years across the school system. So that'll be the first piece we'll go over. Then we'll look at, based on that information, based on that expected growth, what is our current capacity across the facilities, where do we need to grow based on the projected growth, and where are there possibilities to grow based on your current facilities. We'll also look at cost, which is obviously a big component of this, is making the building you're going to do work with the growth, but also within the allocated funds that you have for those projects. So I'll turn it over to Ann. She'll run through the enrollment projection.
Hello.
And how do you spell your last name?
How do I spell it?
Yes, ma'am.
Hoffsis.
Thank you.
So I'm going to talk about the enrollment projections that we did. We did enrollment projections based on where students live, based on boundaries, the elementary boundaries that they live within. This is different from some more typical enrollment projections that are done by where students attend school, so looking at student enrollment at particular schools. What we did was geocode student enrollment and provide projections that way so that we could see really where there was growth or decline in where people were living, so that that information could be used for planning purposes. It does not account for students open enrolling or transferring within the district. That is included in a typical attend projection, but again, we were looking at trends on where the population of students was located. Our methodology is the cohort survival method, which is a pretty standard in the industry to project student enrollment. It looks at historic information such as live birth data and student enrollment to move students from grade to grade, year to year throughout the system. We look at these ratios for back to 2011-12, each year, each grade level, and then we determine a projection ratio based on that, which is applied to develop the projections. So this is the historical enrollment at the district-wide level. The shading really just is there to illustrate these students moving through the system based on our methodology. So pre-K12 enrollment, again, the numbers that I'm going over today are all inclusive of pre-K enrollment. So pre-K this year, for example, was 49. Pre-K12 enrollment increased by 1,171 students since 2011-12, and the current enrollment is 7,153. There was an increase of 48 students just at the kindergarten level from last year to this year. I'm too quick with this. The Cahaba Heights Elementary boundary increased by 28% since 2011-12. East increased 13%, Liberty Park 23%, and West increased 26%. You'll see another line item for out-of-district and unmatched students. Because we're geocoding the students, some of the students, the address didn't match with the system to geocode them, to place them on a map, or the students are actually physically residing outside of the school district boundaries. Those are all included in that out-of-district and unmatched line.
And I don't mean to interrupt
Sure.
your presentation, so I'm sorry, but for example, she is referring to teachers, the fact that we allow teachers who teach within the district to bring their children, so that makes up a significant number of these out-of-district unmatched students. So that would be an example of what that is. Not that you didn't know that.
Thank you. This is a map of student density. At the southwest portion of the district, in the west boundary, that is the most dense area of the district, while the northeast portion of the district in the Liberty Park boundary is the second most dense portion, based on 2016-17 enrollment. Birth data is one of the inputs in our model. It is used to project kindergarten enrollment 5 years later. One thing I'd like to point out is in 2014, there was quite a dip in the number of live births to residents of Vestavia Hills. This will translate into, you'll see in a couple slides, a lower projection for kindergarten enrollment in 2019-20. That's something that the district should keep an eye on. Just to make sure that the projection is holding true to this decrease in live birth counts. These are residents of Vestavia Hills, regardless of where the child is born. So if the child is born in Auburn, but they live in Vestavia Hills, they're counted in these numbers. We look at building permits so that we can try to explain some changes that we see in student enrollment. Over the past few years, there have been between 64 and 80 and 118 building permits issued for single-family homes, which is an increase from 2008 through 2010. The dip that occurred after the housing boom in the early 2000s. This is the district-wide recommended projected enrollment, and as you can see, the dark blue, the 408 in 2019-20, that is the dip that I was referring to as a result of that lower live birth count in 2014. So we developed 4 projections, a recommended, a moderate, low, and high. The low is a more conservative approach that is reflective of maybe some decrease in the rate of building or higher inflation rates, higher interest rates, and possibly a decline in live birth counts in the future. The high is on the other end that would reflect a change in building permits that was maybe on a more aggressive track, more quickly building, and lower inflation or interest rates and an increase in live births. The moderate is in the middle, and the recommended, so those 3, the moderate, low, and high, are very mathematically, statistically based. And the recommended is where I go in and look individually at all of those ratios, try to see some anomalies, try to determine if there were some changes that may have been a result of building permits, things like that, and came up with a recommended. So in all cases, enrollment is projected to increase over the next 10 years. The recommended shows an increase pre-K12 again of 15%, 20% for the moderate, 10% for the low, and 31% for the high. This is again at the district-wide level. Pre-K enrollment, as I said before, is kept flat at the current enrollment of 49 students. We don't project pre-K the same way that we project K because there's offerings at daycares, preschools, things like that. It's a little bit more difficult to project, as well as it's typically influenced by available space and funding. The recommended projected enrollment by elementary boundary for the Cahaba Heights boundary is projected to increase 31% based on the recommended. The west is projected to increase 16%, followed by Liberty Park at 15%, and then east at 8%. The high projections, Cahaba Heights is projected to increase, is basically projected to double its enrollment over the next 10 years based on the high. The east, 19% increase, Liberty Park 25%, and then west 26%. Again, these are mathematically based, and I think Brennan will speak to it a little bit more later on the use of the high for the Liberty Park area. Along with the enrollment study, we are also, Cooperative Strategies is also doing a subdivision yield analysis, reviewing existing residential housing, student locations, doing a live-attend analysis, looking at where students live compared to where they attend school, student residential yields. They will be reviewing proposed planned and approved housing and producing a student potential using housing types of single-family, multifamily, condos, etc. They'll also look at it by house price range and elementary attendance boundaries. The progress to date, they've reviewed 6 years of live-attend analysis, and they've received proposed, planned, and approved residential development. They've also gathered development information from the Liberty Park area and the city of Vestavia Hills, and they're in the progress of doing the student yield analysis. So the next steps that are part of that study is that they'll apply those student yields that they determine to the known housing development, and then that will generate a student potential by elementary boundary, so it'll look at the same geography as the projections. Also, they are going to look at the vacant land within the Liberty Park area to determine housing potential in that area because of the growth that's expected there. So one of the questions we often get is, how do the two studies work together? And the enrollment projections is really based on historically what has happened in the district. And that's based on recent trends in housing, recent trends in live birth data, what's been happening. And the subdivision analysis looks at the potential of students based on future housing development. So if the expectation of development is that it will increase or decrease at different rates than what it currently is, then you'll have some data-backed insight as to whether or not you might want to use the low projection or the high projection. In the case of the Liberty Park area that we kind of mentioned, we'll have some information to back up the use of the high in that case.
Okay, so what does this all mean? We, Ann spoke about that the enrollment projection is complete, the subdivision yield analysis is not. The enrollment projection is based on where students live, not where they attend. Meaning, if you look at a zone, it's all the students that are zoned for a school within that boundary. Where should those students go to school? That projection translates to where those students should go to school, not where they currently going or where they attending, as if they lived in a different zone, but a few students might come from that zone and attend a different school. The enrollment projections is also based on historical trends, so that historical trend does factor in housing development and building permits over the past 10 to 15 years. We looked at permits back to 2000, sorry. So it does factor in those building permits and historical growth for building across those past years. So the enrollment projections do have to factor in that historical growth in building. What the subdivision analysis is going to deny or confirm is, in the areas we're thinking there's going to be an increase in growth, an increase in the number of building permits or houses built over the norm. That's where it might tell us to use a high, a low, or is there an adjustment needed to the recommended model we use. So short of having that information from Liberty Park and those areas where we're expecting a great amount of growth over the next 10 years, we've kind of made a hybrid of our numbers we use between a recommended at East, West, and Cahaba Heights, and the projections those three districts will yield, and we're going to use a high projection at Liberty Park to account for what we're thinking is going to be the highest enrollment projection that will come out of that district. So in keeping that in mind, we looked at the first thing we did is sit down with each principal and go through what is our ideal current capacity across every school. So we looked at what are the ideal classrooms where you would have students in those classrooms all day long, and kept those standards the same across all your school districts, across all your elementary schools, all your middles, and your high school. So this is the basis of how those assumptions were made. So at the elementary school level, we looked at ideal typical classrooms with a 19-to-1 student ratio. Now you'll see this ratio across all the school levels, and I think this is the ideal kind of average ratio that is hoped to achieve across the district. But as you get to a middle school or higher school level, the current numbers are not at this 19-to-1 ratio. They get higher. So this would be on the low end of the student-to-teacher ratio, taking that into consideration. Now it says no special needs classrooms were included. no pre-K classrooms were included, and no multi-purpose classrooms were included. That's because those classrooms and rooms are not ideal, typical classrooms that would house 19 students at a time. For example, your special needs classrooms might have 5 in them at a time, could have 10, could range across. So in size, they might be smaller if you're utilizing some smaller rooms, or you might have one large area designated for special needs with some rooms off to the side, but it's a special needs area. Those special needs students, pre-K students, are in the enrollment projection numbers. So the total enrollment projections will include those students. But by not counting those classrooms in our capacity study, we've already more than accounted for them, because we know there's special needs areas in that school, and there's pre-K rooms that we've already designated as special needs and pre-K rooms in those schools to account for those students. So the current ideal capacity we'll show on these next few slides is just looking at ideal typical classrooms, but know that special needs classrooms, pre-K classrooms are on top of that. There's still areas designated for that, and those students are still included in this capacity analysis. So that was the elementary model. At middle school, we said band, art, and choir would be included, because at any point during the day, you would have students in band, art, or choir, as well as those other areas, where at an elementary school level, if they're going to band or they're going to art, well, they wouldn't go to band, but art or choir, they're leaving their typical classroom to go to those areas, so we didn't count them twice. At high school, the band, art, and choir were included, but you'll see on the next slide that we added kind of a modifier to the high school capacity. We didn't just count, like at the elementary school, every single room, because those students are constantly moving around, as well as you have different course offerings that might have more students or less students than would be in those areas that are more than 19. So what we did is we looked at ideal current capacity across all the facilities. We used, like I said, the recommended enrollment projection for Vestavia Hills East, Vestavia Hills Elementary West, Vestavia Hills Elementary Cahaba Heights, and then at Liberty Park, the elementary school, we looked at a high projection. So this is kind of a molded projection to account for the growth we're expecting the subdivision yield analysis to confirm.
Brennan, on Liberty Park Elementary's ideal current capacity, or time maybe, does that include the building that's going on out there now? In other words, does that factor in the new?
Is that post?
Yes, that's post.
Okay.
So that's once you build that new addition.
Gotcha.
We've already looked at that new addition, the intended uses for all the spaces in that area. Some of those are going to be multi-purpose rooms that weren't included as new classrooms included in this count, or pre-K area. So that's with your new already factored in.
Gotcha.
So east, west, central, we go through all the schools and we look at what is our current enrollment. I believe this enrollment was start of the school year 2016-2017. Ideal current capacity, like I said, we looked at what is the capacity of that the principals expressed was they would ideally want these rooms to house students at a 19-to-1 ratio. There were some areas where they might currently have students placed that might not be an ideal size classroom, or they might have students in an old area designated for another intended use when it was designed for that area. So what we did is not count those spaces, and they're more than accounted for when we count how many areas are in the building. So we looked at current capacity, projected enrollment over 5 years, projected enrollment over 10 years. So the current things that you might notice that kind of jump out is east, your 5-year projected enrollment is 627. If you look at the current enrollment, it's 838. That is because the enrollment projection is just based on kids that live in the east boundary going to east. Right now you have about 174, I believe, students that are zoned for west that go to east. So you already have kids in that district that are zoned that go to go to east that are from the west boundary. So that's kind of where that variance comes in. This projection versus capacity versus current enrollment looks at where should those kids go based on where they live. So that's kind of the variance in east that kind of jumps out. The west is current enrollment versus current capacity. You can see that you're over your ideal current capacity. So this is at that 19-to-1, which you have students in classrooms now that weren't counted in that ideal current capacity that you're housing students in, or that you might have a higher than a 19-to-1 ratio in those areas. Posits, we looked at the same areas with those earlier assumptions. This shows you in 5 years and 10 years you're going to outgrow the ideal current capacity at Posits. Berry, we looked at, we have about a 1,300 current capacity. There's obviously not anyone enrolled to go to Berry right now, and that projection will be factored in later based on how we're going to project Berry to be used. This kind of gives you a snapshot across the schools of kind of what is that projected growth versus what do you have now in the way of capacity. So what we did is went through a few options that we believe are still feasible or might have been talked about to go through and talk about what's the current capacity, how much growth would be needed to accommodate that capacity at that school based on the projected enrollment, and how would it look from a money standpoint if you did those additions to get your growth in line of where it needs to be in 5 to 10 years.
Brendan, can I go back to just one of the enrollment projections? And I don't know if maybe you're the best person to ask this, and it's really just a math question. If I'm doing my math correctly, that as you look backwards with enrollment over the last 5 years, like you said, we grew by 1,171 kids enrolled. And then when I look forward from on the projected enrollment recommended slide, where 2017-18 we've got 7,414, and projected out to 2026 we have 8,205, a growth of, again, a recommended projected growth of 791. So the growth rate doesn't, if I'm understanding this correctly, the growth rate doesn't seem to be, you're not projecting it as high as it has been the last 5 years.
No, correct.
Okay.
I think one of the things that is influencing that is that low birth count in 2014.
I got you.
And over the last couple of years, the delta between the kindergarten 5 years after the births has been increasing. It's been following the same trend, but the delta between the two have been increasing. And I think that it's important just to keep an eye on that and see if that trend continues moving forward, because that does impact the other grades and the following years.
Thank you.
Where would like people moving in or moving out be captured in here, or do you just assume those kind of net against each other?
So the ratios that we look at, the survival ratios from grade to grade, year to year. So if we have, I don't know, Brennan, if you can go back to one of the earlier slides, or if you have the handout on the methodology slide. So if you have 100 kindergartners and then the following year there's 105 first graders, then you've got 5 kids that have moved in, so to speak, and then the following year it's 110. So the ratios are going to be greater than 100%. If people are moving in, they might be less than 100%. If people are moving out, or they might cancel each other out if you have a little bit of both. But those are the ratios that we're talking about, that we're analyzing.
Is that what you were asking about?
And also that we need to keep an eye on, because that'll tell us through those trends where that transiency comes in.
Yeah, because arguably if you didn't have a lot of new housing starts, you could potentially have a lot of people moving into existing properties, which throws off the ratios.
Okay, so we looked at a few different options. The first we wanted to look at was just the current alignment with adding a second high school at Liberty Park as kind of a basis of thought moving forward. So in this option, you're keeping your current grade alignment, you're keeping your current feeder patterns, you're moving Pizitz to Berry to become your middle school this side of town, 6 through 8. You're moving Central to Pizitz to become your 4-5. Central moves offline, and you're building a new Liberty Park High School to have a second high school out there, and also relieve some of the pressure on the high school that's expected with growth at the high school level right now. Now, what this does is it answers questions across the board from the standpoint of growth expected at the school. You will notice at West you see a proposed capacity of 855 with a projected enrollment of 899, 888 over the years. That's because based on the current plan that's been designed, it's a 9 classroom addition at West. So what we're showing is that 9 classroom addition either isn't enough new classrooms to meet your capacity, or you need to take over some board office space to build some more classrooms on this campus if you went through with this option. But the Liberty Park High School, you'll see, obviously the cost is the first thing that jumps out that we've talked about, of $70 million, which if you sum up the options of what you need to do to relieve growth everywhere else besides the high school, plus Liberty Park High School, you get to about $128, $129 million, which we know from looking at a slide in the past, the budget we really have in targeting to allocate is $69 million maximum spent on this program to answer the growth questions. Another big thing that jumps out there at this time, though, is...
Brendan, one question on the $69 million, just to remind me again. That's made up of $54 million in bond money and another...
$14 million out of the reserve.
Yes, sir.
$15 million out of the reserve.
Gotcha.
That's right. So of that 69, you already have some committed cost with the projects that are ongoing. Another big thing that jumps out about this option is if you look at the Liberty Park High School, the projected growth 5 and 10 years of students that would go to a Liberty Park High School. Our assumption there was the students that are currently zoned for Cahaba Heights Elementary and Liberty Park would feed to that high school eventually. So it's not until about year 9, year 10, you cross the threshold of filling a 1,000 max capacity school, meaning that if you built it at this point, you're not going to fill it up until those years, based on using a high enrollment projection in the Liberty Park area. So that kind of jumps out from a standpoint of, even if you had the funds right now, it doesn't make the best sense to build now from a standpoint of growth. It's not a necessity. Option 2, we'll call it 2A, is the current alignment with an academy facility. Now, what makes this as a 2A is that this is your current alignment with no rezoning across the board. At East and West, you'll notice your proposed capacities are 779, 620, 27. That's because, like we said earlier, a lot of kids that are zoned for West are going to East. So if you just looked at the projected enrollment for the areas they should be going, you have a lot bigger school in 5 to 10 years at West than you do at East. What this also means is that at West, like I pointed out earlier, you have 9 classrooms, 9 new additional classrooms that still don't address all the growth expected at those areas. At Pizitz, it does answer your questions moving from Pizitz to Berry. Berry growth based on current capacity to become a middle school makes sense. At Cahaba Heights, the addition of 7 new classrooms that's planned does address your growth in that area. The current classroom additions you have going on at Liberty Park Elementary address your projected growth in that area, as well as Liberty Park Middle School is set with over 10 years from what we're showing of just keeping that facility like it is now. At the high school, creating a central to become a 9 through 12 academy, you're still, if you took, our assumption was that 15% of those kids, if you pulled 15% to become kids that would attend the academy, so those are your 15% numbers for projected enrollment at Central if you started an academy, and the remaining kids at the high school, 85%. So assuming 15% go to the academy, it's still over the 5 to 10 years doesn't address your high school projected growth. Now, that 2,000 ideal current capacity is the number that you, through additional space utilization, getting into some of those techniques, could temporarily relieve some of that pressure, increasing your student to teacher ratio from 19 would relieve some of that pressure, but it's still, building wise and growth, having the 19 to 1 doesn't give you enough relief by doing that academies option. Yes?
What's the 15% based on in terms of students moving from the high school to the academy?
It's a educated assumption of how many students would go to an academy. I think it's kind of a, you might get more, you might get less, but 15 would probably be your first 5-year number, I would imagine.
There's really no good way to target that. One, because we haven't fully developed those, and they would be over time. But we had to pick a number. 25% of our students feels very high based on the interest of our students. But let's say we did have a fine arts academy, or we had a math and science academy. We could envision maybe it'd be 10%, but it was just a number to pick, to think, okay, what might be a reasonable number based on other programs that we know around us and the success of those. That might be a number that we could consider, but even that would be over the course of several years, as those programs would have to be developed, particularly as it relates to financing.
When do the academy grades start? Is that something that, if a student identifies that they want to do an academy, does that start at 9th grade?
Typically go 9 through 12.
And then they stay there the whole time? Is there back and forth? Or
they vary. It just depends on what the students are wanting to take. It depends on how the program is built.
Okay.
But they vary. We're actually going to be visiting some of that. Our fine arts department went to Florence last Friday to look at theirs, and they actually have an idea for what they think might work for us. So it just varies depending on what they are. And how far we're able to develop these programs. So that's a non-answer, but it's about as good as we can as we're beginning to have these conversations and move in that direction. Tyler, how many students do we have starting out in the health sciences currently right now as minimum? That's a minimal program right now. But how many? 55 students, health sciences. But they're not in there full time, they're just enrolled in those classes, but that would build, and you would, if you had an engineering academy, you would hope that that's where the students certainly would focus. But yeah.
And I think we've talked about this before, but the difference, or a difference in the way this academy program would look is it's in a separate facility. Were we able to find across your experience, our experience, another system that had an academy program that was in a separate facility, like off the high school campus, if that's the academy program?
I don't know exactly where they really are. I mean, a lot of them are housed at their high schools.
Sure.
I think Trustful, they have all of theirs at their high school, did they not? Pretty sure that Florence has all of theirs at their, I know Spain Park does, you're right. Hoover is all on Hoover's campus. And now the relationship, it's not really considered an academy of sorts. I don't think they're calling that at Mountain Brook, but they do have an agreement with the Innovation Lab in downtown Birmingham. And I know that they have some students that go there, but it's not, I don't think they're going full time. I don't know enough about the program, but typically that you would try to. For instance, if we were able, Central, I'm just going to give you that as an example, and none of this is written in stone, so I'm just telling you hypothetically. But let's say we were able to move away from Central. Their cafeteria space would be perfect for a culinary arts academy. Okay, so we have the FACS programs at the middle schools. We want to extend that back to the high school at some point, but that would be the perfect location for a culinary arts. So if those students came out of the high school, they would certainly go to that campus. But let's say, or, then that opens up space at the high school, if you will, even to do some other things because your students are coming away from that campus. So our business department that we currently have there, maybe that is expanded to stay on the high school campus. We would have the opportunity to actually have the best of both worlds if we wanted to do it that way.
Highly technical programs like culinary, engineering, frequently those are housed off of a campus in like a career technical center because of the space needs that you would need to have for that. So that typically, now what we're describing at something like a Spain Park is not a career technical center, but when we start talking about culinary and we start talking about some of the other career tech offerings, you would find those typically housed off of a high school campus.
More so for the trades and those kinds of things. So
things like that.
Those would be different kinds of programs.
Yes.
A lot of the, if you had a robotics, if your engineering was centered around a robotics program or what have you, a lot of those, that's what she's talking about. You might find it in a career technical, or if you were doing welding or what have you, in those kinds.
DABS vocational is an example. DABS vocational off of 459 was
possible.
At least DABS vocational school at off of 459 is where my classmates from Shade Valley would go.
Right, there's usually it's a career technical center.
Another example would be Tuscaloosa County or Tuscaloosa City that has their technology center, and that is not on their regular campus. Phoenix City, who is that is very up and coming, they have separate centers outside of their high school or their general education population. So it varies. Okay. I mean, for instance, if we did a partnership with some of the colleges and universities around us, our students, could go there. So it just would look different ways.
Okay.
So you have different scenarios where the students might stay there all day, or they might travel back and forth, and they would need to get back over to the main campus in the after school for extracurricular
whatever they're
activities that they would go.
That's correct.
But isn't a lot of this decision driven by getting the largest number of students out of the existing high school? I mean, culinary, I don't know how many that's going to drag out.
Right.
I mean, we need science and technology, something where there's a big draw to get something bigger than 15%.
If we had some different kinds of programs, which we're not able to currently offer just for the space alone, I think we would be able to, because there's a lot of things that are out there that we haven't even been able to pursue because of space limitations.
Well, and the planning for the financing piece, that's crucial, and something certainly that we would be committed to looking at what we could do in order to be able to do that, yes.
I think another part of it, I'm sorry to interrupt, is just if you did a Academy's facility now, it doesn't take away from if you did a potential 9th grade wing at the high school, for instance, that if you wanted to build a Liberty Park High School 5, 8, 10 years down the road, and based on when that projected growth would eventually reach that 1,000 student max, an Academy's facility takes some of that relief off right now while you're still growing, and then eventually that still makes sense to have as part of your program if you were to build a second high school. So you're relieving some of that pressure right now when you still have a consideration of while you're still growing and still have the capacity, you could wait to build that second high school or explore some other options on down the road. So we're still looking at trying to think of things that still make sense if a Liberty Park High School was eventually to be constructed.
Or even if we decided that for instance, one of the options is going to be move the 9th grade away from the high school. Well, if you move 9th grade away from the high school campus now, plus you move toward an academy model that draws some of the students from that campus, it becomes your icing on the cake for all of that, for even the students and the interest that we're trying to develop.
Thank you, Brennan.
No problem. So that's 2A. The thing I want you to focus on from 2A is the east and west numbers of a potential amount of excess space at east and a shortage at West based on only a 9-classroom addition. 2B is an option that would require rezoning at the east and west districts to rebalance those schools to become more equal in size from a class and projection standpoint. Right now, you're almost already self-rezoning some kids from west to east at those 175-ish kids that go to east to relieve some of that pressure from west of areas you don't have that you can house them. If you did, and this is a 50% rezone, you added the kids that would go to east, kids go to west over 5 years, did the same over 10, and did 50% of east, it puts you at 763 in 5 years, 755 in 10 years. And what makes this look better from a capacity usage standpoint and a building standpoint is that at east you still do not have to do any additional building, and you're still under your proposed capacity in 5 and 10 years. At west, you would only need 4 additional classrooms at west to meet those 763, 755 that would be in 5 and 10 years. So that 4 classrooms saves you about $2 to $2.5 million just from rezoning the kids that currently go to east and currently go to west. You're not talking about rezoning anywhere else. So an option to consider of just, if you kept it like it is, you have unbalanced schools at east and west, with west being much larger and needing a lot more additional construction to meet that growth capacity. If you rezoned east and west, it makes sense from a facility usage and less construction disruption cost standpoint. Option 3 is a K-5 alignment.
I'm sorry, just on option 2A and B, and I think maybe even option 1 as well, the numbers that we're using for allocated costs for the renovation at Berry is $16.5 million, and then for the academy redo of Central is $10 million. Those aren't just back of the envelope numbers. Those are.
No, the 16.5 includes. It does include $9 million in the purchase of the building, okay. But we're assuming $7.5 million we would hope would cover the. See, at Berry, you're not doing any kind of classroom additions or new construction. You're renovating the existing spaces. There's the possibility that we've talked about in the past of that back building, Building G, that contained the old band, I think another gym, tearing it down because of its current state. But you wouldn't have to do that immediately if you did not want to and just did not use that space. But so at 7.5 for renovations at Berry, just for making your interior spaces ADA compliant, cosmetic renovations, getting the building up to standard and code. The $10 million at Central to become an Academy's facility could vary based on how much funding you wanted to include in that facility, how many different offerings you wanted to build and transform from the start, and then how big do you expect your program to be. I mean, if you took that down to 10%, that number might go to 7.5 or $5 million, just based on what's the number of kids you expect to grow based on interest and what academy offerings do you want to have.
I did not appreciate then that the 16.5 already included the $9 million purchase price, because at least I hope that's right, that it's $7.5 million to renovate. Is that the professionals, construction professionals in the room, is that in?
That was the discussion that we had with them.
Okay,
yes.
that's a number that's a good number.
Yes.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
So Brennan, just so I make sure, the $68 million is not new money. It includes the bond issue.
It's the bond issue and approximately 14 to 15 million of reserve.
Right. Yeah. So basically on option 3, that accounts for everything.
Right.
And so on whatever that 100 and some odd million, that's the 60 whatever plus another 68 or 70 million. Okay.
So that 69 million is a number to keep in mind, that at the bottom of the potential allocated cost to always reference and compare back to.
Okay, well, Nancy didn't understand any of that, so I wanted to explain.
Always the gentleman. Part of the solution.
I just make my mark. That's easy targeting.
Another option, 4A, 4B, this is going to be a kind of hybrid option of earlier options, but did we go over 3? I'm sorry. We skipped forward when you went back to talk about budget. I'm sorry. I don't know why Positz is blacked out. It's not on my end. Sorry. The proposed grade alignment there would be K through 5. So this is a K through 5 alignment system-wide. So you're moving Positz to Berry. Berry becomes your 6 through 8 middle. Central moves to Positz, and then Positz, East, West, all rezoned to become K through 5. Liberty Park remains K5, 6, 8 areas, and then the high school is still 9, 12 with a central becoming 9 through 12 academy option. What this means construction-wise is you're still set at East, you're still set at West with the addition of 9 classrooms. Now that number, if you look at the proposed projected enrollment versus what 9 classrooms would give you at a proposed capacity of 855, that's some extra room that you could reduce that number of classrooms to meet your capacity if you wanted to, reducing costs. The Berry, you're just renovating the existing spaces. Same with Positz. Cahaba Heights, you're moving forward with what's currently been discussed and planned. Liberty Parks stays the same. At the high school, you still have the growth issue over 10 years because this is an academy option, and we've seen what the academy numbers do over 10 years. 4A is a current alignment, and this is actually a moving 9th grade out of the high school and shifting them. 9th graders zoned for East and West would go to Berry. 9th graders zoned for Cahaba Heights, Liberty Park would go to Liberty Park, what is the Liberty Park Middle School facility. This is no rezoning across the board. So again, on this option, you have the unbalance at East and West if you did the no rezoning with additional construction at West, 4 classrooms. Berry, to make it a 6-9, you need a new 9th grade wing that would cost in the range of $28 million to add that many classrooms to be able to accommodate a 6, 7, 8, 9.
Not just the 9th grade.
Right.
Renovating the existing facility plus adding 9th grade.
Plus your land costs.
Right.
So you can see the size of the cost associated with that, but also how large that campus is from a 6-9 standpoint at 1770, 1813 projected growth in those areas. At Liberty Park Middle School, we think there is potential of, although you're growing beyond your ideal current capacity, there are about 5 areas in that building if you wanted that you could reutilize. For example, there's I believe 5 science labs that aren't being taught in. So we counted science classrooms. The students would go to science labs as needed. If you taught in the lab and the classroom, that's 5 spaces you already have that wouldn't result in new construction or new dollars just to grow or accommodate these 6 through 9.
Casey, those are being used?
Well, they are science. They are attached to our science classrooms, and so the science, they are used.
But what he's talking about is you have a classroom associated with a lab. You don't have two classes going on at one time, one in the lab. It's not used every day, all day. It's what he described earlier. You have a lab associated with a classroom, so you don't count them twice. You only count them once.
But if we used a science classroom as a classroom and a science lab as a classroom, then that would eliminate science labs. And our teachers are in their labs.
So we wouldn't do that, though, would we?
I wouldn't think so.
No, this is considering those options. It's also considering some. You have 2 computer labs that if you went to a wireless setup could convert into classrooms. This is just to make the potential allocated cost closer to where your budget, your targeted allocated across the program. This is what you would have to do at Liberty Park Middle to accommodate 6 through 9. It's not set up now for that. There would be some minor interior renovations.
And you're just thinking it through in terms of how, going forward in terms of the increase in enrollment, how can, if there are ways to more efficiently use the space, just thinking creatively about that, I guess.
And that's why they met with the principals to talk about what the actual capacity was and how the spaces are used to make that determination.
Gotcha.
So 4A, again, like earlier, east-west, that's keeping current zoning. 4B is the same as 4A with the rezoning of east and west to balance. So a reduce of $2 to $2.5 million just associated with the building, which you could, move to Liberty Park classroom related items if you needed. Option 5 is a K2 3-5 along the 31 corridor with Liberty Park and Cahaba Heights staying K5s. Pizitz would become a 3-5. And Berry, you'd move the 9th grade out of the high school to Berry and Liberty Park based on their current zonings. And your high school would be 10 through 12. As in the last option, this option, if you look at it from a high school standpoint, relieves a lot of the initial 5-year pressure based on a 2,000 capacity high school. So over 5 years, it kind of answers what the academies did not. Over 10, you're still surpassing, but again, talking through the space utilization or using a 19-to-1 ratio, there might be some areas that you could tweak that to give you a longer time fitting within that facility as it currently stands. So east and west would become K2. What this means is the facilities as they currently stand, as far as numbers of rooms, are adequate to support the growth. Pizitz becoming a 3 through 5 would also be, well, you would have to increase 17 classrooms renovation of the existing space. What I mean by that is now Pizitz is a 6 through 8 and it's being utilized in different ways than it would be used as a 3 through 5. We found about 17 to 20 plus areas inside of that school that if you move to a 3 through 5, you could renovate and turn into classrooms that I don't believe you'd need at a 3 through 5 level that you're using as a 6 through 8. So reduces the cost associated with just renovating interior spaces and means no new construction or no new additions. Berry, you're still going to have to add a 9th grade wing with a lot of additional costs beyond just minor interior renovations and land and building purchase. Cahaba Heights stays the same. Liberty Park stays the same. Like we talked about, the high school, this relieves some of that more pressure.
When you say land with Berry, what are you talking about?
I'm talking about just the purchase of the building, the property.
Yes.
Okay, I thought you meant additional. No. And so, Sheila, under this scenario, does this create any alignment challenges with K2, 3-5, K5, ABC, 1, 2, 3?
What it really causes is just a discussion about the way we approach our early elementary teaching and learning. Yeah, I mean,
So maybe.
because we've been, maybe. But it's not as drastic, that option would not be as drastic as if we were talking about 6th grade becoming a part of elementary schools. That is something that's not on the table for us because that is a very different shift. But backing up to, I mean, there are lots of early elementary schools that are K2, K1 and K2. That's nice. Although we like the setup of K3 or K5, just generally in talking administratively about that. The main thing is getting as much alignment as possible. This does not allow for alignment across the district in our elementary schools, which is a different conversation as far as the use of resources are concerned, planning, those kinds of things. So, yeah, I don't mean to be dancing around that because that's not the, I mean, the more you can align it, the better off the services are going to be, the better the teaching and learning are going to be. That's the whole point. But this does answer to a numbers issue as far as the population in our schools and the addition that is needed.
In my recollection, Brennan, this concept's a new concept. I don't think we've talked about it in another work session. You're supposed to be taking things off the table. Don't add things to the table. No, I'm kidding. Thank you for thinking about it.
Not all his fault.
Did Mark tell a funny?
He did. You missed it. Brennan, I want to go back to 4B just because when you get back and you really start looking at this, he talked about this, but we just didn't catch it where it says rezoning required. Those both should be yes. It should mirror it should say yes. It's the same as 4A, but with rezoning to balance the numbers of the elementary schools. But I mean, it's not here nor there, other than later on you may say, what's the difference? That should be the difference.
Okay. Sorry.
Right. It's a lot of information.
Which went over 5. Any more questions about 5? Option number 6 is very similar from a Berry, Liberty Park, Vestavia Hills High School standpoint, but you're doing a K through 5 alignment across the system. So instead of the K2, 3, 5, 31 corridor with the K5 on the Liberty Park side, you're doing K5 across the board at all East, West, Pizitz, Cahaba Heights, and Liberty Park. So we've discussed kind of moving central to Pizitz in all scenarios. That's kind of a given at this point based on the capacity we have at Central and the cost it would take to renovate that area and just the utilization of that campus as a whole. Pizitz is a much better area as it currently stands to use that facility or move those 4 through 5s out. So K through 5 across the system, what does this do? It means at East, you're already set at the proposed capacity. At West, we've talked about this earlier, but 9 classrooms gives you 855. You could reduce that number of classrooms to get closer. Pizitz, you're already set as it currently stands. At Berry, you're still going to have to do a new 9th grade wing. Cahaba Heights and Liberty Park would stay as they currently are planned. Liberty Park Middle School, you're still going to need that about 5 classrooms more, but hopefully could get that with existing spaces. And the high school alleviates some of that pressure over the 5 to 7 year mark. Option number 7 is the combination of almost all of them. A K through 5 alignment system-wide. 9th grade moves out of the high school to Berry and Liberty Park. The high school becomes 10 through 12, and you also construct an academy facility. What this looks like, East and West. East you're set. West you only need 6 classrooms to get to your proposed capacity, which reduces the cost of construction. Now that could be 6 new classrooms, or you could take 6 classrooms from the board office. At Pizitz, the existing facility will support the growth. At Berry, you have a new 9th grade wing, but you'll notice the proposed capacity went down. That's because at the academy facility, it's pulling 9th graders from Berry, 9th graders from Liberty Park, and 10th through 12th graders at the high school, and taking a percentage of those out of those areas to relieve some pressure at the high school, but also at the Berry and Liberty Park campuses. Liberty Park Middle School, you're going to need a few additional classrooms, but at the high school, it supports your growth over 10 years. So, with the exception of a Liberty Park High School, this is the only option as it currently stands based on the capacity we're projecting that answers the 10-year growth at the high school by combining all of these.
This is also an option that does not do anything that would preclude you from adding a second high school down the road and having space built now that would be counterproductive to long-term growth, that would be left over or overbuilt at this point.
Right. As you pointed out earlier, that if you move 9th grade out, you can still move, you could still build another high school and you move those 9th graders back, or you could keep them as they are. This is the last option. We got some, where do we go from here? Nowhere.
The computer has
That's
moved
how
it.
we feel. That captures it.
I don't know. So,
No, Brandon, I appreciate it. I just was looking back at the handout from the December work session where there were 8 options, but what I think of it, what you just presented, a lot more detail. Financials, the financial side of things, obviously the enrollment piece. This is moving the ball forward. This is narrowing or providing more refinement to these options. So I appreciate it. I know it's a heck of a lot of hard work, so thank you.
I do want to go over so the subdivision yield projections and analysis is really what the term is going to confirm what we believe to be true in the Liberty Park mainly, but also the Cahaba Heights areas. Are we using the right projection model in those areas? So we will have that based on what we're hearing. All that data will be gathered and ready to report on sometime between now and next month. We hope to have it sometime in between then. So we're going to further look at cost, but also what's the schedule associated with these reduced number of options, and when feasibly could they be done to turn over in a manner where they meet our growth and meet our bond requirements of use of the funds. We'd hope to have it down to 2 to 3 options hopefully next month, with consideration of these options, some more discussions, more meetings, with the ultimate goal to arrive on one best option. But we do think right now there are some projects that have been in the planning stage and conceptual stage, but we need to, I think, ultimately and are recommending move forward at this time. Those being at Cahaba Heights, there is the second phase is a media center and classroom addition. It's 7 classrooms with an area that could be utilized for special needs or pre-K areas based on how the classroom's set up, with a new media center. We think based on any of these growth models, you have to do something at Cahaba Heights to support that growth. And what changes at Cahaba Heights, there's no variation of does it become a K through 3, a K2. It's going to stay K5 based on all the options we presented. So we think at this time you could go ahead and move forward with the phase 2 project at Cahaba Heights at this time.
And that's in the 15 million that shows up on these schedules.
Right.
Okay. Nancy.
Again, I wanted that clarity.
At West, you'll notice I've renumbered these from phase 1 to phase 2 of what we have had them as, and that is because we think, regardless of this options, like I've said, the thing that's not on here at West is adding any kind of classrooms, but it's a media center and multi-needs renovation that we hope could move forward at this point to be a summer project and to hopefully be complete at the end of this summer and open for 2017. So our goal is to bid this project, have it ready to go, start a summer, and hopefully ending and done and ready to open up when the 2017 fall school year opens. Also,
he's being generous on the hopeful part. He knows what to do with that word. It will be.
It will
If
be.
it gets started, it will be.
At phase 2, I'm now moving it to phase 2 because of just the timeline of sequences that have to fall before it can start. We're recommending that we move forward with a redesign of the new kitchen cafeteria on your existing property. So we're still chasing a property acquisition from the city, still are close to that property acquisition for the west property, that quarter acre, and property needed for this Cahaba Heights Phase 2 project and the long-term Phase 3 project at Cahaba Heights for the traffic loop that's needed. So we're still working towards property acquisition, all 3 of those properties, with once we can acquire it at Phase 2 Cahaba Heights and Phase 2 West, really that land is, since it's being moved onto the property, isn't as driving a factor, but is still needed from a overall it being on your playground as it is and just future growth side of things. We think move forward with that redesign of the new kitchen cafeteria and bid that project as soon as possible and get started as soon as we can and the redesign get approved.
And the new kitchen cafeteria has to be done before we can start on the classroom renovation at West. That's why you wouldn't see, even though we would love them all to be done at the same time and move forward, it's not on there yet because this has to be finished first.
And Brennan, is there
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Is there a scenario where just going ahead and giving this building to West and building a new, more efficient central office on the property at Cahaba Heights or something, is there a situation or a scenario where the cost side of that makes more sense?
We haven't studied the cost side of building a central office at Cahaba Heights in depth. We have looked at it would certainly be cheaper to renovate this building to turn it into classrooms than it would be to build 9 or 6 new classrooms over on the other side. So cost you could offset and save here could go to that Cahaba Heights. We'll analyze, does the cost offset or is it more efficient to build a new central office at Cahaba Heights?
I just want another option
right
in this deck.
Yeah.
But it just seems to me that this is all here, and so for those watching on video, I'm not saying we're going to build a new central office. I'm simply saying that's something to consider.
But Jerry, the other option would be in any of the academy options at Central. It's currently not utilizing that entire facility. So the option could be to renovate some of the Central school. That's been in the back of our minds as we're looking at utilization of Central.
Is there value to Central if you take it offline? And I mean, are there restrictive uses on that, or could you monetize that potentially for to apply those funds somewhere else or something?
Could. I mean, to our knowledge, there's no restriction, but we need to double check that. But it could be utilized in that fashion.
So we could sell it.
Possibly. But it's the only other land that
yeah, I would table that.
Yeah. That's just geographically hard over there, isn't it?
Then the phase 1 and phase 2 at West, is that the $13 million that we've got on some of these options that we've already allocated?
Right.
Okay.
Last question. So, Greg, do any of these scenarios impact the operating budget going forward materially other than... Because I would be interested to know if we're going to build an academy, is that coming out of high school budget?
Well, the academy part would possibly, but I'd have to have some detailed numbers. There'd have to be some study done on what the additional instructors would be that would be placed over there. From an operations standpoint, yes, if you use Central in that scenario, well, no, operating costs of the building should still be the same, or it could go down. The main thing would be the personnel cost associated with having to go out and pull instructors possibly from the high school, put them over there. But somebody has to use some numbers on it to know what that would really look like. In discussing the academies, it has come out that from what Sheila and other educators have said, normally they start off slow, and they do. It takes time to get momentum. So it might not be a huge impact on the front end, like it would be 5 years down the road when they pretty much reach what their max enrollment capacity and the interest of the students are in those programs. So, something we can take a look at.
Right, so if we narrow it down, I just want to make sure we consider the operating side of it, not just the construction side.
All right.
What about by the time we get to option 7, we're $2 million over that 69 being funding. Have you got any thoughts on that?
On that, again, this will be coming in over a period of time. Barry, I would think, is going to be 3 years down the road, probably before anything seriously gets started on it. We are showing an increase in our right now. Have to go through and see where we are at that point. But with it just being $2 million on the front end, it could be depending on how the revenues come in, and if we're, holding our costs down, there may be enough growth in the reserve to go through and cover that. Also, we still have Jefferson County 1 cent sales tax money that is still in litigation, and that's approximately $1.8 million to us if that ever gets settled. So,
Greg, can I add to your comment real quick?
Sure.
The numbers that we are projecting right now, Mark, you asked earlier, is there a logic behind them? There's a science behind how we came up with those numbers. We are cautiously conservative, though, in those numbers.
Yeah.
It's worse for us to come back to you later
Yes.
to say it's going to be $2 million more
Yes, sir.
than to be a little bit conservative today, work and refine these plans and the designs and bring them into line with our maximum budget.
Yeah,
so that is front burner of the target.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that. Thank you. Anything else? All right. Well, again, thank you all for the presentation about the middle schools. Thank you all for the presentation about facilities, and we will adjourn to restart in about 10 minutes or so. Thank you. Good evening, folks. Thank you all for being here tonight for our regular February Board of Education meeting. You folks see the amended agenda on the board. Is there a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And we've also seen the minutes from our meeting last month. Is there a motion to approve those as well?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion about those? All in favor?
Aye.
Dr. Phillips?
All right. First thing I want to do are recognitions, and that is why we have so many people here. For those of you that it is your first time to be at a board meeting, just know you don't have to stay and stand the whole time. I have apologized at times that the boardroom gets so packed and that there's not even standing room only, but that folks are hanging out the door. But I'll make no apologies for the opportunity to recognize the work that is going on in the school district, because our students are, that you are why we do what we do. Parents, your support of the work that they do and the work that we do with them is very important to us. So if we have to be a little bit crowded so that the board can see what the work really looks like in the end as it makes it down to our students, we're just thankful that you are willing to come and let us honor you during this time. So I'm going to begin with the State Superintendent's Art Contest and the Superintendent's Award. This is the second year that we've actually, correct me if I'm wrong, the second year that we've done this process, and that is where the art teachers select certain pieces of art throughout the school district, K12, and they bring it to us, and the team and myself actually select work that we want to send to Montgomery for the State Superintendent's Award. But the work that our students have done is absolutely worth recognition, and just wanted to give you all a feel for the talent and the just the opportunities that our art teachers, K12, are providing for students. So the first piece, are you about to put those up with? The first piece, if you will put up Walker Brown, come on up here. Walker is just quite the celebrity. Walker was actually here last month. I don't know if you remember, but he did a stellar job with his teacher presenting his digital portfolio and a piece of his work. And I did not know who the students were. When we look at the pieces of art, we don't look at names. Of course, they don't have them on there. But his is called Flower. Walker is a student at Cahaba Heights, and his teacher is Katie Hicks. Is Katie here? Katie's not here. But again, we're very proud. Is there anything you want to say about your piece of work?
That I think, I wasn't trying my hardest, but sure.
Imagine if he had. It's a beautiful piece, and we're so proud. Thank you for sharing it with us, and thank you for being here this evening. His parents are here as well, and so anyway, we're thankful that you are here, and congratulations on such a fine piece of art. And then Ellie Duldabadi, is that correct? Did I say that correct? Come on up here, Ellie. Ellie's is called City Cat. She is a student at Liberty Park Elementary, and her teacher is Melissa Gilmore. Is there anything you want to say about your piece?
I tried really hard.
You tried really hard. Well, it is a beautiful piece of artwork, and we were so proud to be able to submit this on your behalf, and thrilled that you have shared your artwork with us. So thank you very much. Abby White. Is Abby here? Okay. Abby, hers is called A Cubist Self-Portrait. She's a student at West Elementary, and her teacher is Jamie Kolb. Is Jamie here? Jamie. Jamie was our art teacher of the year for Alabama this past year. All right, and then Maddie Hazelton from East Elementary. Maddie's is a watercolor mosaic, and her teacher is Bobby McDonald. Is Bobby here? No? Do you want to say anything about your piece of artwork?
I painted it and I put the pieces on it, and it kind of looks like a stained glass window.
It certainly does look like a stained glass window. It is a beautiful piece of art, and we're very proud of you. Thank you for being here. All right, Campbell Price. Campbell is a student at Central Elementary. Her teacher is Susie McCaffey. Susie Caffey. Is Susie here?
Yes, I'm right here.
Right there. Sorry about that, Susie. Hers is it's called The Angry Pharaoh. Is there anything you want to say about yours?
I really like it.
Well, we really like it too. It is an excellent piece. Thank you so much for being here. Michael Deering from Central Elementary. Michael's is called The Crazy Grid Traffic Light, and his teacher is Susie Caffey also. Is there anything you want to say about your Crazy Grid Traffic Light?
It was really just a sketch to begin with.
And then how did you put that together, though? How did you decide on that?
I didn't really expect it to come this far. I don't know. I just started coloring random colors.
Well, it is impressive. Good job. Cecilia Kong from President's Middle School. Her teacher. I know I saw Larry Gibson in here. Her piece is called Looking Up. Cecilia was awarded an honorable mention in the State Superintendent's Visual Arts exhibit. So we're very proud of this piece. Anything you want to say about it?
I'm not quite sure.
Well, it's an impressive piece, that is for certain, and we are thankful that you are here to share it with us. Esther Lee, also from Pizitz Middle School. Teacher Larry Gibson. And you know what? I do not have the name of your piece.
There was after a castle that was kind of deteriorated over time. I don't quite remember the name of it.
Well, it is a gorgeous piece, and we are thankful that you are here. Zoe Harris from Liberty Park Middle. Zoe here. Zoe's teacher is Shay Gosnell, and it is a drawing that she did and was also submitted into the... Oh, yep, is she here? Come on! Zoe, is there anything you want to say about your drawing? You want to tell them about that? There's a lot going on.
Well, we had to do a peace poster at our school, and I thought the best way to do that was to have all the monuments and a bird and an ark, because all the people came from an ark, and yeah.
Very good. Thank you for being here. Lana Chen from Vestavia Hills High School. Her piece is called Through the Lens of Time. Her teacher is Ennis Everett. Is Ennis here as well? Anything you want to say about such an amazing piece of work?
Not really.
No? Who's in the picture? Tell us about that.
It's my neighbor.
It is your neighbor. And did he sit still for it, or did you just have a photograph?
I had a photo.
It's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. Okay. Ella Kate DeWeese. Is Ella Kate here? Yeah. Come on. Ella Kate is a student at the high school. Come on over here. Her teacher is Ennis Everett, and it is called Magnolia. Is there anything that you want to tell them about your piece?
It's my sister.
And it doesn't look like something she would have sat still for. How did you decide on that? How did you decide to do your sister?
It was a picture I had on my phone.
Well, it is a beautiful piece. You did a wonderful job. Thank you. Jessie Ponder, Vestavia Hills High School. Teacher Lorian Daly. Is Lorian here? Jessie's piece is called The Lily Pad. Is there anything you'd want to tell them about your piece?
No, not really.
No, not really. It's beautiful. It is a beautiful piece. The colors in it are just gorgeous, and we appreciate you being here and sharing your artwork with us. Thank you. Melissa Hall, Vestavia Hills High School. Again, teacher Lorian Daly. Melissa's piece is called Hummingbird. And anything that you want to share with the board about your piece?
It took a lot of photos to get that one, but I think it was worth it.
Oh my gosh, it's just amazing that you actually captured that on film.
Yes, ma'am.
It's a gorgeous piece. Just beautiful. Thank you very much for sharing it with us. And thanks for being here. Y'all will just have to give me a minute. I want to make sure that I didn't miss anyone. Is David Dolphin here? Okay. Lauren Satars, is she here? Yes, you're here? Is this your piece? I'm sorry, some folks were left off, so I just want to make sure. It's a soft pastel. Her teacher is Eleanor Rushing. Anything that you'd want to say about your piece?
Not really.
No?
Just want to make.
It was. Tell us how you made it. Then.
It was based off a picture I took at a mountain.
Well, it's a beautiful piece. Thank you for joining us this evening. Did I miss anyone? I have the list here, but I don't want to miss anyone that we may have here that we didn't get on the list. Students, I cannot tell you how important it is that you are here and you let us. Did we miss somebody?
The last one, the Arbor Day.
I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. That's next. That's next. That submitted the pieces of art, and parents, thank you for being here to support your your children in the work that they do. This is something that is very important to us. The arts are very important, and we are grateful for the work that our teachers do. And so I just want to take the time to say thank you. Students, thank you for allowing us to submit your work in the State Superintendent's Art Contest. So thank you for that. And then I would be remiss if I didn't call up Ella Stevens from Central. To. Ella is a 5th grade student at Central. She placed first in this year's Alabama Arbor Day poster contest. Teacher Susie Caffey, right back here, entered her work in the contest. Ella and her family are invited to participate in a tree planting ceremony on the Capitol grounds with Guy Hunter, Commissioner of the Alabama Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. Ella will have to give a 1 to 2 minute speech, correct? Do you have that ready? Do you want to practice?
Oh, she did it today. I did it today. And she did a beautiful job.
Fantastic. Do you have it memorized?
No.
No, okay. Then I'll let you off the hook. But she's going to be speaking on why Arbor Day is important to me is the title, and then she will join the 2nd and 3rd place winners for the tree planting, and we're very proud of her representation of Vestavia Hills on such an important day and in such an important event. Thank you for being here and for your. And then my last recognition is Bridget Littleton, teacher. Is Bridget here? Did she come on, Bridget? The best part of my job, I can easily say, is being able to recognize students and their teachers. And when they excel in the classroom and on the field, the learning that goes on, I just sent an email to the board just today, because our coaches, as do our teachers, but there's an opportunity that coaches have to influence our kids in a way that doesn't necessarily happen in a 52, 53, 54 minute period. When they are on the field and when they are at practice, the character building that goes on, the role models that they are for our students, the instilling in them hard work and a strong work ethic. And there isn't anybody who represents that more strongly than Bridget Littleton. Bridget is our girls soccer coach. She has been named South Region Coach of the Year by the National Federation of State High School Associations. It's only given to 6 coaches nationwide. She was also named the NFHS, the National Federation of State High School State Coach of the Year, and Alabama Coach of the Year by the National Soccer Coaches Association of America in the summer of 2016. This is her 13th year to coach at the high school, varsity soccer, and she also teaches honors English at the high school, and we couldn't be more proud that the recognitions just keep coming for her. Has some other recognitions. I'm going to ask him to come up and do those at this time as well, and then we'll be finished with those.
At this time, I'd like to recognize Mr. Michael Varner and our bus mechanic and our bus drivers. Steve Brennan, y'all come on up as I call your name. Steve Brennan, Alicia Thomas, Janetta Howard, Debbie Posey, Alan Zuniga, and Robert Walton, for attaining the goal of an excellent school bus safety inspections from the State of Alabama Transportation Department. And this is the 12th year in a row that we have received this award. And I just wanted to congratulate them on another great job. One other award, Mr. Steve Brennan is our Vestavia Hills City School Bus Driver of the Year. He was recognized at the Love the Bus presentation at Transportation South in conjunction with the State Department of Pupil Transportation.
Thank you all so much for being here. We are about to begin the serious part of the board meeting. Our guests are welcome to stay, but please do not feel that you have to Thank you all. It is such a joy to honor each and every one of you, so thank you for being here. All right, next item on the agenda, item 4B, is our audit report. So, you're all welcome. Thank you all. Sorry you had to step out.
My name's Jason Harp. I'm with Carl Riggs and Ingram. I have Courtney Brown with me. She was the manager on the board's audit, and we want to briefly go over the September 30th, 2016 audit with you, and certainly allow any questions that you might have about the audit process. And forgive me for flipping around. As we know, governmental financial statements are voluminous and getting more so every year, so I apologize. But what I'd first like to do, you should have your statements in front of you, and there's a report tab. And this is our audit opinion. This is really what you want when you get a financial statement audit. And in this opinion, we're issuing an unmodified opinion, which is the highest opinion we can issue on financial statements, and certainly one that the board would want. Also in this, it does a good job of kind of explaining the process that we go through in a financial statement audit, the things we look at, testing, sampling, those type of items, your responsibility, our responsibility. These things are discussed in this letter, so I think that's something important and something that you certainly would want to look over. The second tab, there's a financial statements tab, and on page 6, I'll give you a second to kind of flip over. Page 6, in governmental accounting, you really have two forms of accounting. You've got full accrual accounting that everybody's used to, like a normal company, and then you've got this term modified accrual accounting that we hear a lot about, where you're talking about general fund and special revenue funds. But on this balance sheet, the thing that I want to point out that's relatively new, on the right-hand side is your liability section. And you'll see midway down you have your net pension liability. And if you remember from last year, that was new. That's where we booked that net pension liability that's really coming from the retirement system of Alabama. So that's your portion of the cost-sharing defined benefit plan of the teacher's retirement system. So that's what that represents. And you'll also see that your debt balance has increased a little some for the debt issuance that happened on September the 29th. So those are two items on there I wanted to point out, and we'll discuss just briefly too a little bit more with the pension footnote momentarily. But if you'll next flip to page 10, this is the area that we probably discussed the most, and that's really your general fund. And I think what's important in here is your number of days of operations that you have. The rule's 30 days, and I think we're at 4.5 months. So we're certainly over that, which is good. And then a few other items on there. You'll see that we decreased our general fund balance by about $1.3 million. But that generally primarily relates to, I think we had a property purchase this year that really drove that. So normally that would be higher, be a positive number. So I don't think that's anything necessarily to worry, since we have an isolated item that caused that this past year. And of course you'll see the activity on here too, because this is a little bit different related to the debt issuance that flows through more or less as revenue on your capital projects fund. And then bear with me, and I normally would never do this, but on page 28, and I know folks may not necessarily want to read footnotes to financial statements, but I always point this out because it's interesting. About 3/4 of the way down, there's a small table that reflects what would happen to that net pension liability that we discussed a minute ago if there's a 1% increase in your discount rate or a 1% decrease. And you can see how awful sensitive that is to any fluctuation in that discount rate. And I know the RSA over the next 2 years is actually going to be lowering that from 8% where we are now to 7.75%. So that will have an impact, and that probably will cause that net pension liability to increase some. I'm not quite sure how much. They're also adjusting a few other actuarial things for salary inflation and those type items that may offset that somewhat. So you kind of have to wait till the actuaries get through with their thing to do that. Related to this kind of upcoming, we're going to go through this same exercise in 2017 and 18 related to your other post-employment benefit benefits that you provide your retirees. So we're going to do this same thing. You really have a promise out for basically health insurance, I believe, for a while that will end out quantifying, and we'll record that back over on that balance sheet as a net other post-employment benefit liability, probably. I'm pretty sure that's what it'll be. And that really will hit in 2018. So that's one thing kind of coming down the road. It's hard also to tell because it's a pooled activity. We really don't know what that number is yet, so we'll kind of have to wait and see what happens when that comes in. GASB 68 comes into effect in 2018. So that's coming down the road. And then finally, I'd like to point out too, just because there's been a big change in this area, page 41 is your schedule of expenditures of federal awards. And you probably have heard this term. I think I spoke about it last year. We've had a relatively large change just in the procedures related to auditing federal awards, and now we call this uniform guidance. In prior years it was A133, now it's uniform guidance. So we've changed some of the ways that we assess programs, make our selections, those type items. Still a rigorous audit that we go through. This year we audited special education, so you can see your programs. You really have two main programs, special ed and child nutrition. So this year we audited that. So I think with that, that's kind of just sort of a brief overview, and I know Courtney's got a few statements she wants to make just regarding kind of the audit process, and then I'll take any questions. Yes, sir.
Yeah, if y'all turn to the last tab called Required Communications, this letter is a required communication to the board just to let you know if we had any significant audit findings or difficulties in the audit or any uncorrected misstatements, disagreements with management, or any other audit findings, and we did not have any of those.
Significant estimates.
Yes, there are two significant estimates that affect the financial statements. The first one is the one that Jason noted, the pension liability of $69 million, and then the other would be your estimate of depreciation expense for your capital assets.
So with that, we'll take any questions that you might have about the audit process.
So you mentioned the special education cluster was
Right.
what you audited this year for your major program. Is that, did y'all audit that one last year?
The child nutrition, I believe, was last year.
No, it was special ed.
It was special ed too.
Since it was high risk.
Right, and that gets back into that selection process now with the uniform guidance. So we may have picked actually both last year, you know, because of the way it fell out as far as the sample selection, but this year we picked it. It actually was kind of getting into that is, you know, it was 40% coverage this year, so that's why we selected that one.
So it's most efficient to pick that and get your coverage.
Next year, that threshold, you know, has changed to 750 now. So what may actually happen next year is now all of a sudden the child nutrition is a type A and type B. Your bigger programs are type A, and there's a $750,000 threshold. That child nutrition is actually below that now. It used to be $500,000, so that's going to be a type B. Because of the way that cycling works, we may have to end up picking it back up and may end up having to do both of those next year and then see how it falls out the following year. I think it'll be 20% the following year after that. So odds are it may be where we actually pick both those programs to test in 1 year just because we've got two. You know, some systems have multiple that you can, you know, kind of go, you know, make different selections. So in any 2-year period, both of those programs are rotating and will get selected to be tested. So
Jason, I know you guys audit a lot of different school systems. How do we compare to other systems, both in terms of the audit process and the audit results?
You know, with all the systems we do, we're fortunate because they're all good systems, and you're certainly at that level. The process of auditing, it's more and more rigorous every year, mainly for the things I said. We have an active governmental accounting standards board. You know, every year there seems like a new, you know, accounting pronouncement that's rolling on. We have obviously an active governmental auditing standards with, you know, uniform guidance. So that's rigorous. But I think the process is very similar and a good process. We have interim field work where we come in late August and early September and perform work. We have our regular field work, which ends somewhere around mid to late November that lasts through maybe early December, and then we have a wrap-up period, and that's common. And what we have, and Courtney mentioned that, what you want is no big adjusting journal entries. Our audit isn't necessarily designed for internal controls, but you certainly don't want any internal control issues. And what we do, we put a focus on testing the controls over payroll. That's your biggest item on your income statement, so we really want to make sure that process is running correctly. So we'll do a lot of internal control testing on payroll, making sure pay rates are correct, personnel files, those type things are where they need to be, so we put an emphasis on that. We also have an IT group that actually comes in and does sort of a high-level overview, mainly more of a security over your IT, to just give us some assurance that everything that's coming out of the box is something that we can rely on related to our audit. So all of those things combined, we feel good about it in our report, and it's certainly comparable to other good systems and what I would think you would certainly expect. And would certainly thank Greg for having us what we need, and I think he can attest it's rigorous and a lot of questions, so and disruptive. So and we appreciate that. So.
I've got one more question on that other post-employment liability that we know is coming.
Right.
You won't know until the work is done and we get the actual final allocation. But do we have even a ballpark guess? Are we talking 10 million or 60 million?
That's what's difficult, and that was how it was with that. It's going to be PHIF or PHIF, so the RSA will tell us out of that big pool what our percentage is. What is actually yours, and that's the problem. We don't really know what that pool is, but your actual percentage, and it's in our footnotes somewhere related to pensions. It's a really small amount when you look at the whole bubble, but it's also a really big number that you're getting allocated out. My guess would be it would be something like that. In other words, you could take, if you took your contributions related to PHIP or those type items over the total contribution that the whole system's getting, that would be the ratio I think that you would use to get allocated this unfunded amount that's sitting out there. But right now we don't know what that might be. So I imagine it will be large, not as large as your pension liability. So.
And it take them quite a while to get the pension liability part worked out.
Yeah.
That first came down.
Any of that cost bubble is hard because unlike the employee retirement system is an agent multiple plan, so it almost works in some ways like a 401k, not exactly, but you kind of have that isolated of what you're putting in and what you're getting out. This works more like I would call a pie. So there's a big pie that will get allocated a percentage of that. So until the actuaries work out their amount, we're really kind of not sure. So.
Questions? Anything else Nancy wants to know?
No, Nancy asked all my questions.
Related to that, and that gets into an issue though, I think, and it gets back into probably bonding and rating. All of that will be happening across the United States at the same time, so everybody will have to put that on. So in some ways, it's all kind of leveled but there again, if you're comparing Vestavia system to another, they'll have the same thing. So, I think in that case they'll know that's sort of the, standard-wide accounting for that. So.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. All right, and then because Brennan hasn't shared enough information with us, along with Rick and Sean, if there's anything, we have a construction update. You're welcome.
Hello again. All right, let's talk about buildings that are already being built and minimize the numbers in this one. So over the past month, Liberty Park classroom additions ongoing. The cafeteria expansion's already completed. Over the past month, the storage room really got completed as far as everything's complete with the exception of having our final inspection for that area. That storage room, if you'll remember, was added on to create additional storage off of the stage. So that scope is complete. However, it'll be in the final inspection with the classroom addition that we're anticipating early next month. So as far as the classroom addition goes, a lot of the finishes are starting to wrap up. Casework's complete, windows installed, tiles installed, acoustical tiles installed, total accessories, tack boards, doors, and hardware. So starting to shape up in the classroom addition itself. VCT flooring in the corridors remains, finished paint, some rubber flooring in your other areas. The kind of critical item that remains is there's going to be a modular retaining wall added outside of the classroom addition that separates the building and the road up above it. So it's building, retaining wall, road that was added to the scope to kind of preserve the trees and the scenery above that area of the existing sidewalk that went across there. That wall will be installed here in the next couple weeks, and then that wall is kind of driving the completion of the site work as far as sidewalks, asphalt paving. So really, interior is nearing completion, should be done about the end of this month or first week of March. I would imagine by the middle of March we should be ready for a final inspection if the schedule holds on that exterior work. So on our timeline, kind of a mid-March final with punch list around the end of the March with an April move-in is the goal that we're turning towards. Some pictures of the ongoing construction. You can see the exterior portions, with the exception of miscellaneous site work, is pretty much complete. The veneer of the building, the roof's done on the classroom addition and the storage portion. Interior of the building, casework's installed. You have carpet in your multi-purpose rooms, VCT and corridors and classrooms. So it's really just finished work, cleaning up, and getting ready for the final inspection at this point. At Cahaba Heights, Phase 1 is the cafeteria expansion and the gym. The cafeteria expansion is completed at this point. They're finishing installation of a new opening we put in the cafeteria for better visibility, but that's finishing up. They've cleaned up and completed punch list in that area. So with the exception, the only remaining work cafeteria-wise is they are going to put a new roof over the kitchen that will be done over this summer just due to timing issues. But as far as the gym goes, they have basically enclosed the building at this point. There's some remaining window insulation that's wrapping up. And then the next step is they set the transformer, Alabama Power set the transformer earlier this week, so getting air started to get conditioned air started in the building for finish installation. The critical item in this gym is the wood flooring, that you have to have that conditioned air running a certain amount of time, condition the spaces, get all the moisture out before you can put that flooring down. So it might sit there for a while, but that's just conditioning the space for the gym. If you look on the exterior, the retaining wall's done, all the veneer's done, the roof's on, so it's just interior finishes at this point. Still trending towards a mid-April finish and final inspection and turnover on that project. Now on Phase 2, we talked about in the work session, but we are recommending, based on our current growth projections and the plan at Cahaba Heights, we don't see anything that makes us think it wouldn't be recommended to go ahead and move forward with the classroom addition and media center expansion, media center addition at this time. So the plan there is to start advertising for that project and get that project bid as soon as possible. Some pictures of the exterior. Some of these were taken in middle of January, so it's changed a little bit, but the window installation has started in the top left picture. The brick veneer's done. The stone at the entrance to the gym is done at this time. then you can kind of see the retaining wall and guardrail that supports the upper drives around that area. On the interior, you can see that some coats of prime paint and are ongoing at this time. You can see the cafeteria in the bottom left, about a new opening that was created. So finishes, sheetrock's going on, the ceiling's been painted. It's just starting that conditioned air and getting ready for that gym floor to be installed. Phase 2, just to give you a picture of kind of what we're talking about when we say Phase 2, classroom addition, special needs. On the Media Center addition will be on this portion. It's a upper and lower floor design with a top floor being accessed by a stair from the bottom to the top. So it can be entered from the bottom side, or you can enter off a door on the second floor. There are some offices that are being added alongside the Media Center to add some space. There will be 7, what we're calling 7 traditional classrooms added with the addition of a special needs area that has 2 classrooms with 2 different casework and sinks and a restroom in the middle that meet, that could be used as a space with a common area in the middle to be used by both classrooms. The existing Media Center is going to be turned into a multi-purpose room, and then a conference room constructed in this area as well. So this is the Phase 2 that we're planning to move forward with based on what we've seen with the growth projections. At East, main thing at East that's obviously the new gym cafeteria is the project that's ongoing there at this time. Rain continues to hinder this project that's still getting out of the ground. The rain's kind of been sporadic over the past month or so, but it'll rain. By the time it dries up, it rains again. So by the time you get mud and stuff out of the footing, it's just slowing what we hope to be faster progress getting out of the ground. But they still are proceeding with the footing installation, hoping to get completely out of the ground this next month to pour the slab. So that's kind of where that stands. We're still doing underground MEP rough in to get out of the ground, so weather getting out of the ground is hopefully less of a factor. Still trending to September completion date with an October occupancy on that project. Just some of the pictures just coming out of the ground, footing installation. They've started CMU foundation block around the exterior of the cafeteria. Baseball, we talked about last month, achieved substantial completion. Just over the past month, they've been completing punch list work. The punch list is pretty much complete with the exception of the batting cages, which were a combination of a high school project and a turf project that's still going on, but it's nearing completion with the batting cages coming out of the ground with new turf on the batting cages. So that's really the only thing that remains as part of this scope. The fencing was installed around the field since the last time we talked. That was remaining. They've completed all the punch items that were related to their scope of work.
Tyler, have you gotten a report from baseball players or baseball coach about?
It's great. We've already played several games on it.
Yep.
4 or 5 games already played. It's playing well, playing faster. It did. Kids like it.
Good.
So showed the pictures, same pictures as last month with the exception the bottom left. It's hard to see, but some pictures of the fence around the outfield that have been installed since the last month. At West, we talked about during the facilities work session, this is the project, if you remember, that we rejected what was then Phase 1 new kitchen cafeteria bids, reworking a plan at this time based on what we know about West and growth to move forward with a summer project that is multi-needs and media center renovation project to start at the beginning of the summer to be completed at the end of summer for a fall 2017 turnover, and then moving forward with a redesign of what will now become Phase 2 based on the timeline of a new kitchen cafeteria that is redesign to be on your property to just get out and start moving forward. So the plan is to redesign that project to tweak it to fit on current board property and rebid that project as soon as the design's approved, start advertisement and get bid and started on that project.
Brendan, if I may, I just want to say that I've been working with Jeff, and he certainly has been working with city leadership on helping us with the conveyance of the land at West and at Cahaba Heights, and so that is moving forward, depending, where it lands in their process, but that is moving.
So just kind of the current plan on the table at West. The piece to kind of move forward at this point would be phase one is a renovation of the existing media center area to convert the areas in this area here into special needs classrooms that are more suitable and designed for that specific classroom environment. Renovation into this area to some usable spaces. This area over here is the bottom floor of the classroom addition that's currently designed should we decide that 9 classrooms is needed at West. The second floor, lower floor, depending on how you look at it, is some new classrooms in this area, converting the existing kitchen cafeteria into some of those classrooms, which is why Dr. Phillips said earlier that until this new kitchen cafeteria is completed based on this design, you can't proceed with that classroom addition until that's completed because you're using some of those existing areas. So new kitchen cafeteria that's off the back of the building. Barry, still reviewing. We've reviewed capacity more in depth over the past month. We've looked at space utilization within that area. So as we continue to explore this option, still keeping in mind that need to get going on Barry as soon as we can nail down the option and determine what it would best be utilized as. That's it. Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you, Brian. All right, time for financial statement.
Hang on. Fortify yourself, that's right.
This portion is presented by Red Bull, right?
Maybe I need to start handing those out before this. So, yeah, information presented in your packet tonight is the financial information for January. Do like to report that revenues are coming in strong this year. A little bit of a timing delay, I think, between last year and this year in that right now we're at 65.9% of our local ad valorem. Last year we were at 77.7%. But I pulled numbers earlier today, and as of receipts that had come in as of today, we're within $5 million of hitting our ad valorem total for the entire year at this point. So that puts us at approximately 85% of what we had projected and budgeted for ad valorem. Looking at expenditures, we're at 34.8% of budget. Last year we were at 32.33% of budget. So we're tracking very close to where we were last year and seem to be on track for the year. I will say if you go back and compare this report to the previous month's report, the budget figures are different. This reflects our budget amendment that I brought to the board last month and submitted to the state. Budget amendment has been approved by them. Also, they have examined our financial statements, which they've had for quite a while, and they have finally approved those. So we are up to date on everything we have submitted. I would also like to report that Moody's had gone through and done a review of our bond rating. In particular, they reviewed the issuance rating. They had already rated us, the Board of Education, with an issuer rating of AAA. The initial rating on the bond issue itself was a AA1. It has now been officially upgraded to AAA, which is the highest rating that you can get. In conjunction with that, they also did a review of the city and upgraded them also to a AAA standing.
Good news.
That's good news.
And I will point out one more thing in talking about the bond issue. Nancy, you're the only one probably interested in this, but under the bond issue, we have continuing disclosure requirements that we have to make every year. Those are included in the MD&A portion of the audit, and that's how we will handle that in the future to make sure that's part of that process. And when we go through and upload the audit into Emma and put it out on our website, all that information will be in one place for anyone who wants to go through and take a look at it.
Good, good. And then at the same time you do that, you'll be putting a bond rating upgrade out on Emma as well.
Yeah, that's actually, I have Matt Adams coming by Friday morning, and we're going to sit down and I'll try to figure out how to get back into the Emma website and get that posted and loaded on there.
Okay.
Having said all that, there are no real unusual items of revenue or expense for the month, and all the board bank accounts have been reconciled as of the end of January.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Greg.
I recommend that the board approve the financial statement for January 2017. Board bank accounts have been reconciled through January 2017.
Dr. Phillips has recommended approval of the financial statement. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, consent items. I recommend that the board approve the following consent items: out-of-state and/or overnight trips, disposal of property as well, please.
You've heard Dr. Phillips' recommendation concerning these consent items. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Item 7A, maintenance supervisor supplement. I recommend that the board approve the following supplement: maintenance supervisor, $10,000 per year, please.
Dr. Phillips has made this recommendation concerning the maintenance supervisor supplement. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any question or discussion?
The only discussion I would have is that with Mr. Varden's pending retirement, we have an opportunity to shift the way that we supervise the maintenance staff, and we feel that providing a supplement, we'll be posting internally. We feel like we have candidates within our school district that can fill this role, so we posted that. I'm asking you to approve the supplement, which we don't currently have, in order to allow us to move forward with that.
Any other questions? All in favor?
The only other thing I want to say about that before we move on, if I may, I asked Ed if he would come to the meeting this evening, left it up to him as to whether or not he wanted to do that, and Ed, I appreciate the fact that you are here. He was not here the evening that you approved his retirement, but Ed has been with the school district for 24 years is what the records say. Is that accurate? One of the things that I said to him in our meeting is that when you lose someone like him, which I'm not bitter about it at all, by the way, but when you lose someone like him, you lose a tremendous amount, not only just the person that has worked with your system and with you for such a long time, but you lose a significant amount of institutional knowledge that you cannot replace. He has knowledge not only of our campuses inside and out, but of other campuses. He was familiar with Barry, and you just can't replace what we are about to lose in him. And I just wanted to take the opportunity tonight to say one more time, and then also say publicly how very much he's appreciated moving into this position you know, you have to be able to depend on somebody who knows your buildings, your facilities, and the care of them is significantly important, as the principals can attest to. And we will certainly miss you, Ed, and your leadership of the maintenance and facilities. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to recognize him for his work for the school district, and certainly being a partner in crime here as we go about our work. So,
yes, Mr. Barney.
he's going to have a blast, though. I'm not worried about him a bit. Item 7B, I recommend that the board approve the DHHS course as submitted, please.
You heard Dr. Phillips' recommendation concerning this new course at the high school. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any question or discussion?
This is the robotics course that I believe we have talked about in one way or another at times, have we not, Tyler? And this is allowing us to add a course that takes the programming and the robotics another step further, and is certainly something that we find very valuable.
Mark is teaching that, correct? Sorry, I took
with a speaking style. It's got Mark's speed, I think.
I wish I could defend myself. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor?
All right. Item 7C, I recommend that the board approve policy 6.26, non-traditional high school diploma option as submitted. The first reading was January 25, 2017. Please.
You've heard Sheila's recommendation concerning this diploma option. Is there a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Any other questions or discussion? I think we talked a little bit about it last month.
This is a requirement from the state, right?
It is, yes. It certainly is. Just a high school option diploma for students who want to go back and if they meet the requirements based on what the state has set forth as far as those requirements are concerned. This is certainly not something that we have developed, but that is, yes, it's exactly what it is.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Personnel, I recommend that the board approve the following personnel actions: a resignation, transfer, leave of absence, and employments, please.
Dr. Phillips has made this recommendation concerning personnel. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And then lastly, updates. Last Friday, we had our Professional Development Day. Brooke, Jane Marie, Jennifer, Jane Marie, all helping to coordinate that effort. They did a fantastic job. We brought in Ron Berger, who is internationally known for his work. He is a professor at Harvard, and his entire work is on student engagement and ownership of, not only by students, but teachers, and the quality of work. And I'm actually, as a funny, and you have to know that this is as a funny, but I'm going to suggest that this could be our next big issue in Vestavia Hills if we're not careful. But the whole point was about showing teachers K12 and across all content levels quality of work. And this actually happened to come to me just today. Jason Bostick sent it to me from Cahaba Heights, and I have permission from the student and his parents. I wish that Powell Curry is the young man's name. He's in first grade. I actually wish he were here, but because of the timing, and I just wasn't willing to wait, because I just thought the timing of this was a lot of fun, and you'll see the quality of this first grade student. And I think this could be our next issue, Emily. Here's your next article. He drew a picture, and it's an opinion piece. And if you can't read it, it says, "My opinion is that students should have a 3-day weekend. Friday is a fun day. I think that because..." What did he say? "I think that because everything is open on Fridays." Keep going, Whit. And then he says, "We can have more days on trips," and he says, "For example, I do," y'all, I'm sorry, I'm struggling to read it. "I do that sometimes. I could go to my cousin's house and stay later, and we can be in more places." He says, "For example, we could go to Airwalk, and that is why students should have 3-day," and it says weekendy. And I just think, there it is. we should campaign for a 4-day week. So what would that look like? But just the fact that this little guy, I mean, the learning that goes on at first grade now, and he's writing an opinion piece, he has his examples in there. You know, it's just, I just couldn't resist sharing it with you all as I gave you the update on professional development. Because what Ron Berger did actually is he put several examples up, several student samples on quality, and talked about, you know, that's how we go about our work. We look at a quality piece of writing or a project that is being done or science, you know, a report, anything. But we should be putting these things out in front of students so that they see what our expectations are. And he really did a great job of talking K12. And then the afternoon that they designed at each schools based on the administrative discussions that they were having allowed teachers time to talk about and plan and debrief and all of those kinds of things in moving that conversation forward. Again, it's also goes back to the professional learning communities and the focus on professional development, and these kinds of days are made possible even with the help of the foundation, because we were able to extend that into the summertime and all those kinds of things. And it was really a great day, I felt like, and I think the administrators would agree, in focusing on quality of work and student engagement and the teaching and learning, which is the part that we're all a bunch of nerds on. So anyway, but it was a great day. Also, just a couple of items we have taken, and I have spoken in several venues about the fact that we are taking I guess, just a more active role in the Help the Hills partnership that was established, and just we are actually rolling out. Is the web page up for that? Okay, working on a web page with the Help the Hills, you know, all of the entities involved. Tyler has taken a lead on some conversations with some physicians. Jerry sat in on a meeting with them, and just talking about such things as how do we renew the energy for the voluntary drug testing program, and making certain that parents understand that we are an active partner in that, not taking on the work of Help the Hills, but being just a more just being a stronger partner with the organizations that are involved in that coalition. The mayor, one of the things that he has assisted us with is has called, Kimberly, I think you can help me with this, a town meeting on March the 20th. Is that at 6? I think it's at 6 o'clock. Simply so that we can talk about what Help the Hills is, to make sure. One of the comments that was made to me recently, which, you know, I understand everybody's vantage point, so I don't mean this negatively, but a parent said to me, we don't have drug education in our schools anymore. Well, we most certainly do. The life skills training piece that Jennifer alluded to earlier, that's at our middle schools, and our teachers and our students have been actively involved in the conversation about healthy choices and certainly things that can lead us to choices that are not healthy. And so, but we wanted to make sure that we were a more active partner in this organization. And so you'll see more and more things with our involvement. Again, not necessarily taking a lead, but making certain that we're all arm in arm as we work as a community to combat the issue of alcohol and drug addiction and things of that sort. We are in the throes of a legislative session. I gave you some items that come from the Superintendent's Association. Every year they publish for us those talking points that are critical at any time during a legislative session. Those talking points could change. The agenda items can change for them based on the conversations that are going in Montgomery, which we have no control over, except that I will say our representatives and senators, they are involved with us as superintendents and will certainly call. We have direct communication with them. There is a group of superintendents that are in Montgomery every day of the session. I will actually be going in early March. And then they call us forward with action items and things of that nature. As the session goes on, if there is something that is affecting education that we need to have a voice in. But that is ongoing. Of course, we all know that March 7 is an important day for us. And in talking about all that we have this evening, it certainly hits home that March 7th and the tax renewal is very important. I've also given you some of the the flyers with the talking points on them to share as need be. There have been several different approaches to this conversation throughout Jefferson County. Craig Pouncey with Jefferson County did a press conference, and then Kathy Murphy was asked to do an interview as well with one of the local media. But that's a very important day for us in getting the yes vote out there to renew these taxes. Again, they are not new, and that is the main message to everyone. They're not new tax rates, but they are very important to the tune of almost $14 million for us in particular, but certainly for the other school districts as well in Jefferson County who do not have the resources that we have. It's just as important for them. So we're asking everyone to get out there on March 7th and do the yes vote. Final Four basketball. I mean, I don't know how you get any more fun than that. First year coach, and I sent you all the email from Coach Davis earlier today. Just again, a role model for what it means to take from the classroom to the court and what they are teaching. Pardon me?
Wrestling.
And wrestling, yes. Wrestling is on the list. Wrestling, the state yet again, and I don't know if you looked at the point spread, but nobody was even close. I have talked with Coach Adams, and they will be here in March. It seems to be an annual event. We will not do it have that meeting down here. We'll have it upstairs, but they'll be joining us in March, as will the invitation will go out to our National Merit finalists, all 17 of them. Yes, they did qualified. Of course they did. The presidential scholars that we have had qualify for that. And so just a lot of really great things going on. Tyler's working on the details as far as what in the world does next Thursday look like. I will let you know that is also Leadership at Sadie Hills Education Day, but we are working with Alicia and Meredith, who we've just kind of upset their apple cart in the schedule of the day, but we're making it work for them. I've asked Jan to give a very quick technology update because I think you need to hear what all is going. You'll be very interested in this, David, about what is going on with technology, because a lot of work is happening currently with technology.
Yeah, and I just want to let you know real quick, we have two big things really going on right now. One, with Google Apps for Education, our kindergarten through 12th grade have always had email accounts. In the fall, we decided that we would make a change, and so we're in the middle of migrating over to Google Mail for our employees. So that's over 700 staff members that will be using Google Mail now instead of, we've been using Outlook and Exchange. With that, it seems kind of easy because you would think it would be just signing in, but it's a little more than that on the back end, because we're moving not only their signing in procedures, but it's all of their emails, all their contacts, everything, the addresses, everything will go with them. So that's been a huge undertaking. We're hoping to cut over by the end of March so that we were completely all Google Mail at that point. And so it will be really big for our teachers. And it's not only the teachers, it's all the employees. We've had professional development for the custodians, for the bus drivers, for maintenance, for the parents, for our CMP workers. We're going all the way across the board with it. And the last thing I want to share, which is huge, especially our teachers are excited. We have 2 schools left. We started in January rolling out new MacBook Pros. We've been, they're like well-oiled machines, these tech department is. We come in, I let the guys do it, I give them a half a day. And they have to have it done within, from 8 to 12, we roll out because their time is as valuable as the teacher's time. So we roll in, we roll out, and the teachers take them back and they start using them. So by spring break, our last school is going to be the high school, but because it's going to probably take us about 2 days to do it. 2 half days, that's all I'm giving them for that. But by the time we roll that out, though, by the end of spring break, we're going to hit posits week after next week. We're going to give them orientation, and then we roll them out probably the next week after that. So that will be about 600 machines, brand new ones out in the district. So we thank you for that too.
Can you edit that last part out of the video? Because somebody might hire her to run their deployments at other places on that schedule. There's some law firms in town that would appreciate that kind of efficiency.
Thank you, Jan. I need to go back, just, this is similar to the legislative session. You all may hear that there are a lot of decisions that are up in the air as far as the change at the State Department. We specifically, the Over the Mountain school systems have been brought to the table to have discussion about some of these items, such as the assessment and accountability piece. And I may be sharing more with you. We actually have a meeting tomorrow, but we are also going to be, we're involved in the conversation, whether they want us to or not, on such things as the ARI funding and funding for AMSTI, which are very, very important to all of us. We don't know if you remember, but you just approved, gosh, I don't remember when, but before school began. Brooke, help me with that. I don't even remember when you approved, but it's almost to the tune of $250,000 worth of materials for AMSTI. Those are the kinds of things that we do not want to go away, but just know that we're having conversations about that. There's also conversations about the other funding and programs and where the State Department is headed, even the structure of how the State Department is set up. So we're not exactly sure what that's going to mean for us, but we are engaged in the conversation with them. And then lastly, Dinner and Diamonds is Saturday. The foundation, oh my gosh, the work that they have put into this. It's at Regents Field again. It's a great evening, a great event, and they just awarded over $50,000 in grants, and Dinner and Diamonds helps with their administrative costs and such, and so it's a very important event to them and certainly to us, and we're grateful for the leadership there. I have no idea what I've forgotten.
That's
Anything
great.
else?
All very exciting. Thank you. Now's the time of the meeting where we open up for public comment. If anybody has any comment, please limit it to what we've covered in our agenda for this meeting. All right. Have a good evening. Thank you for being here.